As we begin this quiet lecture together, let yourself settle into a place of ease. The day, with its many movements and voices, can slowly fall away now. What remains is a softer rhythm, one that moves at the pace of your own breathing, calm and steady. Tonight, we will explore the hidden world of cells, the smallest living units, and how they work together in remarkable harmony to create the living forms we know so well. This is not a hurried exploration. It is an invitation to drift slowly, to follow the gentle unfolding of life at its smallest scale, while your mind settles deeper into rest. When we think of life, we often picture forests of trees swaying in the wind, rivers carrying water across landscapes, or animals moving through the quiet of night. But all of these great forms are made possible because of something invisible to the eye. Cells, so small that they require the magnifying power of a microscope, are the true foundation of life. They are the basic units, the tiniest organized pieces that together shape the grand structures of the living world. And while each cell can, in some cases, survive on its own, the true wonder emerges when we see how they act collectively, not as isolated fragments, but as partners in a continuous dance of cooperation. Imagine, for a moment, the body you rest within now. Beneath your skin, hidden from sight, trillions of cells are alive. They are not chaotic. Each one is busy with quiet tasks, communicating with its neighbors, passing along signals, sharing resources, and carrying out the instructions that sustain your being. You do not feel each of these tasks directly, and yet their results are present in every breath you take, in every slow and steady heartbeat, and in the calm of thought itself. To consider this is to realize that life is not only a matter of individual parts, but of connection, of countless small presences working together in harmony. The story of how we came to understand this hidden universe begins long ago. In the 17th century, Robert Hooke held a piece of cork beneath the lens of a simple microscope. Through the glass he saw a pattern of small chambers, like tiny rooms arranged in order. He called them cells, borrowing a word that meant the small rooms of a monastery. At the time, he had no way of knowing that what he saw were the walls of plant cells, empty of their living contents, yet still hinting at a profound truth. That simple moment was a beginning, a first glimpse into the architecture of life. Others would follow. Scientists refined the lenses of microscopes, peered deeper, and discovered that cells were not empty spaces, but vibrant communities, filled with structures and activity. They saw nuclei, the central regions that carried genetic material. They saw the division of cells, the way one became two, and two became four, ensuring the continuity of life. Slowly, a theory emerged that all living beings are composed of cells, that the cell is the basic unit of life, and that all new cells arise from pre-existing cells. These ideas formed the foundation of cell theory, a cornerstone of modern biology. To think of this quietly, in the stillness of night, is to imagine a vast hidden city within every living thing. Each cell is like a dwelling, a small structure with its own tools and supplies. But unlike houses that stand apart, cells exist in deep connection, building tissues, weaving organs, sustaining entire organisms. They are not solitary. They are profoundly social, and it is this cooperation, more than anything else, that allows life to flourish. Consider, for a gentle example, the heart. Within its walls are millions of specialized muscle cells. Each one contracts rhythmically, but alone, a single contraction is nothing more than a quiet flutter. Together, as one vast sheet of coordinated movement, they form the steady beat that keeps blood flowing. None of these cells can pause to rest on its own. for the rhythm must remain unbroken. They rely on one another, on signals passed from cell to cell, ensuring that the heartbeat remains even and constant. Elsewhere, in the lungs, cells line delicate air sacs, so thin and fine that oxygen can slip across into the blood, while carbon dioxide flows outward. These cells, too, are part of a quiet agreement. They cannot capture oxygen for themselves alone, but instead allow the gas to move into the bloodstream, where red blood cells carry it onward to every corner of the body. These red blood cells, in turn, surrender their load to tissues in need, taking carbon dioxide back in exchange. It is a circle, a flow, a continuous act of sharing. Even in the brain, where neurons carry thought and sensation, the work is not solitary. A neuron is a cell with long branching arms, reaching outward to touch thousands of partners. Signals travel along these branches, electrical at first, then chemical, as they leap across tiny spaces called synapses. Alone, a neuron can send a spark, but only together, in vast networks, do they form the patterns that give rise to memory, to perception, to the quiet awareness you feel now as you drift. This quiet collaboration does not stop within organs. It extends across the body as a whole. Cells in the pancreas release hormones into the blood, tiny chemical messages carried to distant tissues. These messages tell other cells when to take in sugar, when to store energy, when to release fuel. Cells in the immune system patrol the body, recognizing danger and calling others to join them when needed. No single immune cell can protect the body alone, but together they weave a web of vigilance that shields against harm. The beauty of this cooperation is its balance. Cells specialize. They take on tasks that others cannot. A skin cell forms a protective barrier. A muscle cell contracts with strength. A neuron carries signals with speed. Each is limited in what it can do, yet none is diminished by this limitation. Instead, their diversity is their strength. Because they work together, the body as a whole achieves what no single cell ever could. As you rest here, listening quietly, remember that your body is not a simple machine. It is a living symphony, composed of countless tiny performers. They play without pause, their music unheard yet deeply felt. Each note is a chemical reaction, a gentle signal, a steady contraction. Together, these notes weave the rhythm of life. Let this thought accompany you into rest. You are not alone within yourself. You are a community, a vast gathering of cells working in unison. Their harmony is your harmony. Their balance is your balance. And as they continue their tireless, quiet labor, you are free to drift deeper, carried by the knowledge that life, at its core, is built on cooperation. 2. The discovery of cells. In the quiet unfolding of history, there are moments that at first seem small but later prove to be vast in meaning. The discovery of cells was one of these moments, a gentle turning of a lens that revealed a hidden universe. Imagine the 17th century, a time before electricity, before modern science as we know it, when the world seemed larger and less understood. Glassmakers were experimenting with lenses, polishing and curving them so that they might magnify the world. Out of this curiosity came the first microscopes, simple tubes of glass and metal that could enlarge what the naked eye could not see. They were not powerful compared to today's instruments, but they opened a door that had always been closed. One of the first to step through this door was Robert Hooke, an English natural philosopher. In the year 1665, Hooke published a book called Micrographia, filled with drawings of objects he had observed through his microscope. Among these was a piece of cork, a common material, the bark of an oak tree. Through his lens, Hooke saw not a smooth surface, but a pattern of small, box-like compartments. They reminded him of the tiny rooms, or cells, in which monks lived within monasteries, and so he gave them the name cells. What Hooke had seen were in fact the walls of dead plant cells, their interiors long gone, leaving only the outlines. Still, the name remained, and with it a new way of thinking about life began to take shape. Though Hooke's observation was important, it was only the beginning. Around the same time, in the Netherlands, a tradesman named Antonie van Leeuwenhoek was fashioning microscopes of his own. His lenses were small but crafted with extraordinary skill, and they allowed him to see details that no one before him had glimpsed. Looking at drops of pond water, he described tiny creatures moving, darting, and spinning. He called them animalcules, little animals. And with this description he revealed that even the smallest pools of water held entire worlds of life. He peered at his own blood and saw red blood cells flowing like countless tiny discs. He looked at the plaques scraped from teeth and found living organisms there as well. For the first time, humanity began to understand that life existed on scales far smaller than previously imagined. As the years passed, more scientists looked through microscopes, each seeing more than the last. In the early 19th century, two German scientists, Matthias Schleiden and Theodor Schwann, studied plants and animals with careful attention. Schleiden, a botanist, concluded that all plants are made of cells. Schwann, a physiologist, came to the same conclusion for animals. Their work led to a unifying statement: all living things, no matter their form, are composed of cells. Later, Rudolf Virchow, a physician, added a crucial insight that all cells come from pre-existing cells, dividing and multiplying in a chain of continuity, stretching back through time. Together, these ideas formed the foundation of what we now call the cell theory. Cell theory is simple in words, yet profound in meaning. First, all living organisms are composed of one or more cells. Second, the cell is the basic unit of life, the smallest structure that can carry out all the functions we associate with being alive. And third, new cells arise only from the division of existing cells. These statements may feel obvious now, but in their time they reshaped biology. Life was no longer a mysterious substance that flowed without structure. It was instead a pattern, built from repeating units, each one alive, each one part of a larger whole. To imagine the impact of this discovery, think of the difference between looking at a tapestry from afar and stepping close enough to see each individual thread. From a distance, you see an image, colors blending, shapes forming, perhaps a landscape or a figure. But when you look closely, you see that the entire picture is made of countless tiny threads, woven together. In the same way, cell theory revealed that every leaf, every feather, every hand and face is not a continuous sheet of matter, but a weaving of countless cells. Each thread contributes, and together they form the whole. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is the scale. A typical human cell is only about 1/10 of a millimeter in size. To the naked eye, it is invisible, vanishing into the unseen. And yet, trillions of these invisible units come together to form a single human being. Without the lens of a microscope, it would be impossible to imagine such a truth. Hooke, Leeuwenhoek, Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow gave humanity not just knowledge, but vision, the ability to perceive what had always been hidden. It is soothing to think of this history as a kind of awakening. Each scientist, in his own time, was like a person slowly lighting lamps in a darkened hall. First, Hooke lit a small flame, revealing the empty chambers of cork. Then, Leeuwenhoek lit another, brighter flame, showing that water teemed with life. Schleiden and Schwann lit two more, revealing that all plants and animals shared the same cellular foundation. Finally, Virchow's lamp cast its glow upon the truth that life continues by the division of cells, each generation born from the last. Together, their lights illuminated a new way of seeing the living world. As you listen now, drifting toward sleep, you may imagine yourself looking through one of those early microscopes. The glass is slightly curved, the image a little blurred, but still you see something wondrous. Small shapes, repeating, connected, alive. They may look simple at first, like tiny boxes or circles, but within them is a mystery deeper than the stars. Each is a world, a place where life is both protected and expressed. Each carries instructions written in molecules, energy flowing in subtle currents, and quiet processes that keep the whole alive. The discovery of cells was more than a scientific achievement. It was a reminder of unity. Before this knowledge, plants and animals seemed entirely separate, different in form and substance. But when seen through the lens of the microscope, both were revealed to be made of the same repeating units. Life, in all its diversity, shared a common foundation. To realize this was to see connection everywhere. The grass beneath the feet, the bird in the sky, and the human heart were not separate in essence, but joined by the same cellular fabric. And so, as you lie quietly now, let this thought rest gently in your mind. Every living thing around you, from the smallest insect to the tallest tree, from the fish in the sea to the people you love, is composed of cells. They may be countless in number, diverse in shape and function, but the principle is the same. The discovery of cells showed us that life is not scattered, but built on a shared pattern. It is a truth that binds all of nature together, a truth revealed slowly through glass and light, and one that continues to remind us of our place within the quiet harmony of life. 3. The cell theory. As we continue our gentle journey into the hidden world of life, let us pause to consider one of the most important ideas in all of biology, an idea that quietly unites every living thing under the same guiding principle. This is the cell theory, a simple set of statements, yet filled with meaning. It is said that all living organisms are composed of cells, that the cell is the basic unit of life, and that new cells arise only from existing cells. These words, though plain, are like the foundation stones of a great building. They support everything we know about how life works, and they offer us a way to see the world not as a collection of separate creatures, but as a continuous fabric woven from countless tiny living threads. When we speak of the first idea, that all living organisms are composed of cells, we are reminded that from the smallest bacterium to the tallest tree, from the simplest algae drifting in a pond to the vast complexity of the human body, the same truth holds. Every form of life is built from cells. They may differ in size, in shape, in structure, but all follow this basic pattern. To picture this is to imagine a grand mosaic made of countless small tiles. Each tile is unique, but together they form a whole picture, the picture of life itself. The second statement, that the cell is the basic unit of life, gives us a way of understanding what it means to be alive. A cell is not just a fragment or a part, but a complete system in miniature. It can take in energy, respond to its surroundings, grow, divide, and in some cases, live independently. A single bacterium, floating unseen in a drop of water, is just as alive as a human being, for it carries within itself all the processes needed to sustain life. Larger organisms are not single cells, but vast communities of them, gathered together, each contributing a small part to the whole. In this way, life at every scale reflects the same principle, that the cell is the smallest unit, where the miracle of life is fully present. The third statement, that new cells come only from pre-existing cells, gives us a sense of continuity, of an unbroken chain stretching backward through time. When a cell divides, it gives rise to two new cells. Those in turn divide, and so the pattern continues. Every cell in your body can trace its lineage back to the earliest divisions of a fertilized egg, a single cell that held the potential of your entire being. And that egg cell, in turn, was formed by the union of two reproductive cells, each with its own history. If we follow this chain further and further into the past, it carries us back not just to our parents and ancestors, but to the very origins of life itself. The cells alive today are the distant descendants of the first cells that ever lived on Earth billions of years ago. In this way, each of us carries within us a living history, a connection to the beginning of life's story. Cell theory may seem straightforward, but its implications are profound. It tells us that all of life is related, not in a vague or poetic sense, but in a literal one. The cells of a fern leaf and the cells of a human hand share the same fundamental architecture. They both carry genetic material in the form of DNA. They both rely on similar processes to produce energy, and they both follow the same basic rules of growth and division. Life is diverse, but beneath the surface, it is unified. This recognition of unity is one of the great gifts of science, a truth that allows us to see the connections that bind all living beings together. It is calming to think of this theory as a kind of thread that ties us not only to other people, but to every form of life around us. When you walk through a forest and see leaves unfolding in the sunlight, you are witnessing the activity of plant cells, filled with chloroplasts, turning light into energy. When you breathe, the cells in your lungs exchange gases, giving oxygen to the blood and receiving carbon dioxide in return. When you eat, the cells lining your digestive tract absorb nutrients, while countless bacterial cells living in your gut help to break food down. The theory tells us that although the forms differ, the essence is the same: cells working together, making life possible. It is also soothing to reflect on how the theory connects the past with the present. Each time a cell divides, it passes on not only its physical contents but also its genetic instructions. These instructions, written in the long strands of DNA, ensure that the daughter cells know how to function, how to contribute to the larger whole. This process is not new. It has been happening for billions of years. The cells alive today are linked by an unbroken chain to the very first living cells on Earth. That chain has never been broken. In every plant, every animal, every human being, the story of life continues, carried forward one division at a time. For all its simplicity, the cell theory also carries a kind of quiet elegance. It shows that complexity is built from simplicity, that the vast diversity of living forms can be traced back to a single pattern. This is a lesson not only in science but in perspective. When life seems overwhelming, filled with countless details, it can be calming to remember that beneath it all, there is a common foundation. Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up bodies, and bodies make up populations and ecosystems. At every level, cooperation builds upon cooperation, yet the cell remains the basic unit, the starting point for all that follows. As you listen to this, you may find yourself drifting deeper into a state of calm. The rhythm of life at the cellular level is steady and unhurried. Cells grow, divide, and communicate in cycles that continue without pause, yet without haste. They are patient, they are persistent, they are faithful to the roles they play. This constancy is part of what sustains us, part of what allows us to rest. Even as you close your eyes, your cells continue their quiet labor, maintaining balance, repairing damage, and ensuring that the body remains whole. The cell theory, then, is more than a scientific principle. It is a reminder of connection, of continuity, and of cooperation. It tells us that we are not isolated, but part of a living fabric that stretches across all of life. It tells us that within each of us is the record of an ancient story, one that began billions of years ago and continues today in the quiet hum of cellular activity. And it tells us that the smallest units, though invisible to the eye, carry within them the power of life itself. So as you rest now, let these thoughts settle gently. You are a being made of countless cells, each one alive, each one part of the whole. They are joined to one another, and through them, you are joined to all of life. The discovery of this truth, expressed in the cell theory, has given us not only knowledge, but also a way to see our place in the world. It is a place of connection, of continuity, and of quiet harmony. And with this thought, you may let go, allowing yourself to drift into the same steady rhythm that guides the cells themselves, a rhythm that is calm, unbroken, and timeless. 4. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. When we look at life closely enough, beneath the surface of plants, animals, and even the smallest organisms, we find that all living beings are made of cells, yet not all cells are the same. They fall into two broad categories, prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and this division is one of the most fundamental distinctions in biology. To drift through this thought is to picture two great branches on the tree of life, each shaped by billions of years of evolution, each carrying its own quiet design. The difference between them is not only structural but also historical, for one represents the oldest and simplest form of life, while the other embodies complexity and cooperation on a scale that makes multicellular organisms, like ourselves, possible. Prokaryotic cells are the more ancient of the two, thought to have appeared over 3.5 billion years ago, not long after the Earth itself cooled enough to sustain life. They are small, usually only a few micrometers across, and simple in structure. They lack a nucleus, the membrane-bound compartment where eukaryotic cells store their DNA. Instead, the genetic material in prokaryotes floats freely within the cell in a region known as the nucleoid. Their internal organization is minimal, without the elaborate system of organelles found in more complex cells. And yet, despite their simplicity, they are marvels of efficiency. Bacteria and archaea, the two domains of life composed of prokaryotic cells, thrive in environments across the planet, from the deepest ocean vents to the highest mountains, from the human gut to the frozen soil of the Arctic. They are survivors, adaptable and enduring, carrying the legacy of the earliest life forms. Eukaryotic cells, by contrast, are larger and more complex. They are thought to have arisen later, perhaps 2 billion years ago, and their appearance marked a profound shift in the story of life. The hallmark of a eukaryotic cell is the nucleus, a membrane-bound compartment that holds the cell's DNA, carefully packaged and organized into chromosomes. Around this central command center, the eukaryotic cell contains a variety of organelles, each enclosed by its own membrane, each with a specialized role. The mitochondria produce energy. The endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus manage the synthesis and transport of proteins and lipids. Lysosomes break down waste, and in plants, chloroplasts capture sunlight for photosynthesis. This compartmentalization allows eukaryotic cells to perform many tasks at once, like a bustling city where each building has its own purpose, yet all contribute to the life of the whole. The contrast between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells can be imagined as the difference between a small, sturdy cottage and a vast, sprawling estate. The cottage is simple but self-sufficient, everything within reach, nothing wasted. The estate, by contrast, is complex, with rooms for different activities, halls for communication, and specialized spaces for particular functions. Both provide shelter, both sustain life, but their forms and possibilities differ. Prokaryotic cells, in their simplicity, can reproduce quickly, adapting to changes in their environment with remarkable speed. Eukaryotic cells, in their complexity, can build multicellular organisms where different cells take on different roles, cooperating to form tissues, organs, and bodies. Without the complexity of eukaryotic cells, animals and plants as we know them could not exist. The story of how eukaryotic cells arose is one of the most fascinating in biology, and it reveals again the theme of cooperation. The prevailing theory, known as the endosymbiotic theory, suggests that eukaryotic cells originated when one prokaryotic cell engulfed another, not to destroy it, but to live in partnership. Over time, the engulfed cell became an organelle, passed on to future generations as part of the host. Mitochondria, the energy producers in our cells, are thought to be the descendants of free-living bacteria. Chloroplasts in plants, which carry out photosynthesis, are believed to have the same origin, once independent organisms that became permanent residents within larger cells. This merging of lives, from separate to inseparable, created the foundation for the complex cells that make multicellular life possible. If we imagine this long ago partnership, it is like picturing two small creatures choosing not to compete, but to cooperate. One provided protection, the other provided energy, and together they formed something greater than either could be alone. This is a quiet reminder that cooperation is not only present in the daily functioning of life, but is written into its very history. Even the cells that make up our bodies today are themselves the result of ancient alliances, partnerships so complete that the once separate lives can no longer be distinguished. In the present, prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells continue to shape the living world in their own ways. Prokaryotic cells dominate in number, far outstripping eukaryotic cells. They form the invisible majority of life, cycling nutrients through ecosystems, producing oxygen, fixing nitrogen in soils, and even aiding digestion in the guts of animals. Without bacteria, life, as we know it, would not be possible. Eukaryotic cells, meanwhile, form the basis of the organisms we are most familiar with. Animals, plants, fungi, and countless microscopic protists. They give rise to complexity, diversity, and the visible richness of the natural world. Though their forms differ, both types of cells remind us of the adaptability and persistence of life. A prokaryotic cell can survive in boiling springs or acidic lakes, where almost nothing else can endure. A eukaryotic cell can build tissues and organs of incredible intricacy, weaving together into forms that see, think, and feel. Together, they show that life has many strategies, many designs, yet always returns to the principle of the cell as its foundation. As you rest with this thought, imagine yourself floating between these two worlds. First, in the small, simple space of a prokaryotic cell, where life is pared down to its essentials, efficient and direct. Then drift into the larger, more complex landscape of a eukaryotic cell, where compartments and pathways give rise to layers of activity. A quiet city alive with movement. Both are alive. Both carry the spark of continuity from ancient times, and both remind us of the many ways life can be sustained. The division between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells may seem like a boundary, but it is also a bridge. One leads to the other, and both together form the fabric of life on Earth. Their differences are not barriers, but variations on the same theme, variations that show how adaptable and creative life can be. To reflect on this is to recognize that there is no single way to live, no single design for survival, but many paths, all rooted in the same cellular foundation. So as you let your breathing slow, let this thought rest gently in your mind. Life began with cells, and over time it unfolded into two great forms, the simple and the complex, the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic. Both endure, both thrive, and both carry within them the story of life's persistence. It is a story that began long before us and will continue long after, written in the quiet language of cells, in their divisions, their cooperation, and their endless capacity to sustain the living world. 5. The architecture of a cell. When we imagine a cell, it may be tempting to picture it as something simple, a tiny bag of fluid with little more than a few molecules drifting within. Yet the truth is far richer and far more intricate. Each cell, though small beyond sight, is a carefully organized structure, a living architecture with parts that each serve a role. It is as though, within this microscopic space, there exists a city, bustling quietly with activity, every pathway connected, every chamber devoted to a task, every process unfolding in harmony with the others. To drift through this inner landscape is to find balance and order, a reminder that life at its smallest scale is neither random nor chaotic, but guided by design and cooperation. At the boundary of this world lies the cell membrane, a thin, flexible layer that separates the inside of the cell from its surroundings. Though delicate, this boundary is alive with activity. It allows nutrients to enter and waste to leave. It communicates with other cells through signals carried by proteins embedded in its surface. It is both a barrier and a bridge, protecting the cell while linking it to the greater environment. If we imagine the cell as a city, the membrane is its wall. But unlike a wall of stone, it is fluid and dynamic, constantly shifting to accommodate the needs of the whole. Within this boundary lies the cytoplasm, a clear, gel-like substance in which the cell's structures are suspended. It may seem like empty space, but it is not. It is filled with molecules, ions, and tiny fibers that guide the movement of materials from one place to another. Imagine the gentle current of a stream carrying small objects along its surface. In the same way, the cytoplasm allows the contents of the cell to move, ensuring that each part receives what it needs. The cytoplasm is not simply background. It is an active participant in the life of the cell, a medium through which countless processes flow. At the heart of many cells lies the nucleus, a structure often described as the control center. Enclosed within its own double membrane, the nucleus houses DNA, the long strands of genetic material that contain the instructions for life. Within these strands are genes, sequences that guide the production of proteins, the molecules that carry out nearly every function in the cell. The nucleus is not only a library of information but also a place of decision, where signals from the outside world can influence which instructions are read and which are set aside. Within the nucleus is another structure, the nucleolus, where ribosomes are assembled. These ribosomes, once formed, will leave the nucleus and begin their role as builders of proteins. Ribosomes are small but essential. They can be found floating freely in the cytoplasm or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum, a network of folded membranes that winds through the cell like a labyrinth. Ribosomes are the factories of the cell, reading the instructions carried in RNA and assembling proteins one by one, linking amino acids into long chains. These proteins may become enzymes, catalysts that speed up chemical reactions, or they may become structural components, forming parts of the cell's framework, or signaling molecules, carrying messages from one part of the cell to another. In their quiet, repetitive work, ribosomes sustain the very essence of life. The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, has two forms. The rough ER, studded with ribosomes, is devoted to the synthesis and processing of proteins. These proteins may be secreted from the cell, inserted into its membrane, or sent to other organelles. The smooth ER, by contrast, lacks ribosomes and has a different set of tasks. It is involved in the synthesis of lipids, the breakdown of toxins, and the storage of calcium ions. Together, these two forms of ER represent an essential infrastructure, guiding the flow of molecules, shaping the balance of the cell. From the ER, proteins and other molecules are often sent to the Golgi apparatus, a stack of flattened membranes where they are modified, sorted, and packaged. If the ER is the workshop, the Golgi is the post office, preparing each product for delivery. Some proteins may be marked for transport to the cell surface, where they will be secreted. Others may be sent to lysosomes, small compartments filled with enzymes that break down waste materials. Lysosomes are the recyclers of the cell, reducing old or damaged components into their basic parts so they can be used again. Even in this microscopic world, nothing is wasted. Everything is part of a cycle of renewal. Among the most important structures in the cell are the mitochondria, often called the powerhouses of the cell. These small, double-membraned organelles are responsible for producing ATP, the molecule that serves as the energy currency of life. Mitochondria take in glucose and oxygen, and through a series of chemical reactions, release energy that powers the cell's processes. Without this energy, the cell could not function. Yet mitochondria are more than mere power stations. They are also deeply tied to the history of life, carrying their own small set of DNA, a reminder of their origins as once free-living organisms that became permanent residents within eukaryotic cells. In plant cells, there is another organelle with a vital role, the chloroplast. These green structures, filled with the pigment chlorophyll, capture sunlight and use its energy to build sugars from carbon dioxide and water. This process, photosynthesis, is the foundation of nearly all life on Earth, for it provides the energy and organic molecules that sustain food chains. Within a chloroplast, light is converted into chemical energy, and that energy flows outward, feeding plants, animals, and ultimately, all living things. Like mitochondria, chloroplasts carry their own DNA, further evidence of their ancient partnership with larger cells. The framework that gives the cell its shape is known as the cytoskeleton, a network of protein fibers that extend through the cytoplasm. These fibers are not rigid. They are dynamic, able to assemble and disassemble as needed. They provide structure, anchor organelles in place, and act as tracks along which vesicles and other cargo can be moved. The cytoskeleton also plays a role in cell division, helping to separate chromosomes into new cells, and in movement, allowing cells to change shape or migrate. In many ways, it is both skeleton and muscle, both support and means of motion. All of these parts, from the membrane to the nucleus, from the mitochondria to the cytoskeleton, are not separate but interconnected. They communicate, exchange materials, and coordinate their activities. A signal from the outside world may pass through the membrane, enter the nucleus, and lead to the production of a protein. That protein may be assembled in the ribosomes, modified in the ER, packaged in the Golgi, and transported to the surface, where it alters how the cell interacts with its neighbors. Each step depends on the others. Each structure supports the whole. It is soothing to reflect on this architecture as a reminder that even at the smallest scale, life is organized, purposeful, and deeply interconnected. A cell is not a random collection of molecules, but a carefully balanced system where every part has meaning. It is a microcosm, a world within a world, sustaining itself through cooperation and communication. As you rest now, imagine yourself drifting gently through this landscape. The membrane shimmers at the edge. The cytoplasm flows like a soft current. The nucleus glows with the threads of DNA, and the organelles hum quietly with their work. This is the architecture of life, hidden from sight, yet always present, sustaining every breath, every movement, every thought. It is a world both intricate and serene, a reminder that harmony exists even at the smallest scale, guiding the rhythm of life from within. 6. The cytoskeleton's support. Deep within the cell, beneath the shimmering surface of the membrane and amidst the flowing cytoplasm, lies a hidden framework, an architecture not made of stone or steel, but of delicate protein fibers. This framework is the cytoskeleton, a name that might suggest rigidity, but in truth it is a living structure, constantly shifting, assembling, and disassembling in quiet rhythms. It provides the cell with both shape and movement, strength and flexibility, support and guidance. To reflect on it is to imagine the scaffolding of a building that is never static, always changing, always responding to the needs of the whole. The cytoskeleton, though unseen, is one of the most remarkable systems within a cell, a reminder that even at the smallest scales of life, structure and function are deeply intertwined. If we picture the cell as a small city, then the cytoskeleton is both the skeleton and the roadways. Its fibers extend through the cytoplasm, giving the cell form, resisting pressure, and allowing it to maintain its integrity. But these fibers are also the tracks along which cargo is carried, vesicles and organelles moving from one region to another with the help of tiny motor proteins. These proteins, like quiet couriers, walk along the cytoskeletal fibers carrying their loads, step by step, powered by energy molecules. Without this system of roads and carriers, the cell would fall into disarray, with materials unable to reach their destinations, with organelles unable to remain in place. There are 3 major types of fibers in the cytoskeleton, each with its own characteristics. Microfilaments, also called actin filaments, are the thinnest, composed of strands of the protein actin. They form dense networks near the cell membrane, helping to shape the surface of the cell and drive movements such as crawling or engulfing particles. Intermediate filaments are thicker, providing tensile strength, like cables that prevent the cell from being pulled apart. Microtubules are the thickest of all, hollow tubes made of tubulin proteins, stretching like highways through the cytoplasm, guiding the placement of organelles and forming the spindle that separates chromosomes during cell division. Together, these 3 types of fibers create a system of support and motion, each contributing its own qualities, each essential to the balance of the whole. Microfilaments are the most dynamic of the cytoskeletal fibers, assembling and disassembling rapidly in response to signals. They allow cells to change shape, to extend thin projections called filopodia, or broader sheets called lamellipodia, enabling them to move across surfaces. This movement is not hurried but deliberate, guided by chemical cues in the environment. In the human body, immune cells such as macrophages use these movements to travel towards sites of infection, guided by signals released from distressed tissues. At the same time, microfilaments within the cell cortex, the layer beneath the membrane, provide structure, preventing the membrane from collapsing inward. They are the cell's outer frame, subtle and responsive, balancing strength with flexibility. Intermediate filaments serve a different purpose. They are less dynamic, more stable, and their main role is to provide mechanical support. In human cells, they include keratins in epithelial cells, vimentin in connective tissues, and neurofilaments in neurons. These filaments act like ropes that hold the cell together, resisting stretching and providing resilience. In tissues where cells are subject to stress, such as the skin, intermediate filaments link neighboring cells through structures called desmosomes, distributing tension and ensuring that the tissue as a whole does not tear apart. They do not drive motion, but they give strength, a quiet stability that allows the cell to endure. Microtubules, by contrast, are the great highways of the cell. Thick and hollow, they radiate outward from a central organizing center known as the centrosome. Along their length, motor proteins carry vesicles, mitochondria, and other cargo, walking step by step in opposite directions depending on their type. Kinesins move toward the outer edge of the cell, while dyneins move toward the center. It is a slow but constant flow, as though the cell were filled with invisible traffic, each load carried with precision to its proper place. Microtubules are also responsible for forming cilia and flagella, whip-like structures that extend from the surface of certain cells, enabling them to move or to sweep fluids along their surface. In the respiratory tract, for example, cilia beat in coordinated waves to clear mucus and debris, a rhythm sustained by the arrangement of microtubules within them. Perhaps the most striking role of microtubules is in cell division. When a cell prepares to divide, its microtubules reorganize into a structure known as the mitotic spindle. This spindle attaches to the chromosomes, lines them up in the center of the cell, and then pulls them apart to opposite sides. Without this precise choreography, the daughter cells would not receive the correct number of chromosomes, and the continuity of life would be broken. The cytoskeleton, then, is not only a support for the living cell but also a guide for its renewal, ensuring that the cycle of life continues with fidelity. The cytoskeleton also connects the inside of the cell to the outside. Proteins that span the cell membrane link cytoskeletal fibers to structures in the extracellular environment. This allows cells to sense the stiffness of their surroundings, to respond to mechanical forces, and to anchor themselves within tissues. For example, cells in muscle tissue use these connections to transmit the force of contraction, ensuring that individual muscle cells work together as one. In this way, the cytoskeleton is not isolated. It is a bridge, linking the cell's inner world to the larger body in which it resides. To think of the cytoskeleton is to think of balance. It must be stable enough to give the cell strength, yet dynamic enough to allow change. It must hold the cell together, yet also enable motion. It is not one structure but a system, with fibers that differ in size, in speed, in function, yet come together to create a harmony of support. Its existence reminds us that even at the smallest scales, life is shaped not by rigidity or chaos, but by a balance between stability and change. As you listen, you might imagine yourself shrinking down to drift through this hidden framework. Around you, fine filaments stretch in every direction, glowing softly, forming paths and scaffolds. Tiny proteins walk along them, carrying vesicles like lanterns through the quiet city. In the distance, organelles rest in place, tethered by filaments, kept steady by invisible lines of force. Above you, microtubules extend outward, like great bridges, while beneath you, actin filaments weave a dense net beneath the membrane, shaping the surface of the cell. It is not silent, but the sound is gentle, like the hum of an orchestra tuning in unison, each part contributing to the harmony. The cytoskeleton may be unseen, but its presence is felt in every aspect of life. It is in the steady beat of cilia that sweep airways clear, in the graceful swimming of a sperm cell, guided by its flagellum, in the crawling motion of an immune cell as it searches for intruders, and in the strength of the skin as it stretches and bends without tearing. It is in the precise separation of chromosomes that ensures continuity, in the placement of organelles that sustains balance, and in the countless invisible movements that keep the cell alive. So as you rest now, let this thought stay with you. Within each of your trillions of cells lies a framework, delicate yet strong, ever-changing yet constant, quiet yet essential. It holds you together. It guides motion. It sustains life at every level. The cytoskeleton is not just the support of the cell. It is the quiet architecture of living order, a structure both intricate and serene, shaping the rhythm of life from within. 7. Plant cells and their unique features. Among the vast diversity of life, plant cells stand as some of the most remarkable examples of cooperation, structure, and quiet endurance. They share much in common with animal cells, for they too are eukaryotic, filled with organelles that sustain them. Yet they also carry a set of unique features that distinguish them and allow them to perform tasks no animal cell can achieve. These features are not mere curiosities, they are the foundations of life on Earth, for they make possible the green world that surrounds us, the forests, grasses, and crops that sustain all other forms of life. To reflect on the plant cell is to reflect on the balance of structure and flexibility, of strength and openness, and on the ways that cells adapt to their roles in the great web of living systems. The first and perhaps most striking feature of a plant cell is its cell wall. Unlike animal cells, which are bound only by a flexible cell membrane, plant cells are enclosed in a rigid layer made mostly of cellulose, a carbohydrate that forms long chains strong enough to give shape and stability. The cell wall provides firmness, allowing plants to stand upright without bones or skeletons. A tree stretching toward the sky or a blade of grass swaying in the wind owes its form to the quiet strength of its cell walls. Yet this rigidity does not mean isolation. Plant cell walls contain small channels called plasmodesmata, which act as bridges linking one cell to another. Through these openings, water, nutrients, and signals pass, allowing the cells of a plant to remain connected, not as solitary units, but as members of a larger, coordinated body. Inside this wall lies another structure unique to plant cells, the large central vacuole. This is a fluid-filled compartment that can occupy most of the cell's interior, pressing the other organelles toward the edges. The vacuole is a reservoir, storing water, sugars, ions, and waste products. It also plays a key role in maintaining turgor pressure, the internal pressure that keeps the plant firm and upright. When a plant is well watered, its vacuoles are full, and its stems and leaves stand tall. When water is scarce, the vacuoles shrink, the pressure drops, and the plant wilts. Thus, the vacuole is both storage and support, a quiet guardian of balance within the plant cell. Perhaps the most important feature of all, however, is the chloroplast. These green organelles are the sites of photosynthesis, the process by which plants capture sunlight and convert it into chemical energy. Within the chloroplast, pigments such as chlorophyll absorb light, setting off a chain of reactions that split water molecules, release oxygen, and produce sugars from carbon dioxide. These sugars provide energy not only for the plant itself, but for nearly all other living beings. Animals, fungi, and even many bacteria rely, directly or indirectly, on the energy stored in plant-made sugars. Every breath of oxygen you take, every bite of food you eat, is tied to the activity of chloroplasts within plant cells. Without them, the Earth as we know it would not be able to sustain the diversity of life. Chloroplasts, like mitochondria, are more than just organelles. They carry a history. They have their own DNA, their own ribosomes, and they divide independently within the cell. This is evidence of their origin as free-living organisms, ancient cyanobacteria that long ago entered into a partnership with larger cells. Through this endosymbiotic union, the power of photosynthesis became part of the eukaryotic lineage, and plants were born. To reflect on this is to recognize that even the smallest green leaf carries within it a story of cooperation that reaches back billions of years, a story written in the quiet, light-harvesting structures of chloroplasts. Plant cells are also remarkable for their ability to specialize. While all carry the same basic organelles, their forms and functions vary depending on their role in the plant. In the leaves, cells filled with chloroplasts capture sunlight and build sugars. In the roots, cells absorb water and nutrients from the soil. In the stems, elongated cells form channels known as xylem and phloem, transporting water upward and sugars downward, creating a circulation system that sustains the whole organism. Some cells develop thick, lignified walls to provide strength, becoming the wood of trees. Others remain flexible, forming the soft tissues of fruits and flowers. Each type of plant cell contributes its part, and together they create the great diversity of plant forms. Communication is another hallmark of plant cells. Through plasmodesmata, signals can spread from one cell to another, allowing tissues to respond as a unit. When a leaf is injured, chemical signals travel from cell to cell, alerting distant parts of the plant to prepare defenses. When sunlight strikes one side of a plant, cells across the stem adjust their growth, bending the plant toward the light. These processes remind us that plants, though rooted and silent, are not passive. Their cells are in constant dialogue, sensing their environment, adjusting, and responding with quiet precision. One of the more subtle features of plant cells is their role in creating ecosystems. By producing oxygen and sugars, they sustain not only themselves but entire food chains. Algae in the oceans, made of plant-like cells, generate much of the Earth's oxygen. Forests, vast gatherings of plant cells, regulate the climate by absorbing carbon dioxide. Even in small ways, the products of plant cells ripple outward. A flower produces nectar, feeding insects. A fruit ripens, feeding animals. Seeds are carried, and new plants arise. In every case, the foundation of these cycles is the activity of plant cells, working together to capture energy and share it with the world. As you rest, it is soothing to imagine drifting through the interior of a plant cell. The cell wall rises around you, strong yet porous, its channels glowing softly where materials pass from one cell to the next. The central vacuole stretches wide, filled with fluid, pressing outward gently to keep the cell firm. The chloroplasts shimmer in shades of green, their membranes folded into stacks where light is transformed into life's currency. Around them, the other organelles hum in quiet cooperation, each one contributing to the balance of the whole. It is not a scene of noise or haste, but of calm and steady rhythms, a microcosm of harmony. Plant cells remind us that strength can come from stillness, that endurance can arise from quiet cooperation, and that the most vital processes of life often unfold without sound or motion. Every tree, every blade of grass, every flowering plant begins with these cells, their walls firm, their vacuoles full, their chloroplasts capturing light. To know them is to know the foundations of life on earth, the source of breath and nourishment, the silent companions that sustain all living things. So as your thoughts slow and soften, let the image of the plant cell rest gently in your mind. Imagine the stillness of a forest, the strength of a tree, the quiet persistence of grass growing after rain. All of these arise from the features of plant cells, from their walls, their vacuoles, and their chloroplasts. Working together in unison, they are small, yet their influence is vast. They are silent, yet their work is essential. And as you drift deeper into calm, you are held, like all life, within the quiet gift of their enduring labor. 8. Animal cells and flexibility. When we turn our attention from the green world of plants to the moving world of animals, we find that the cells within them tell a different story. While plant cells are defined by their rigid walls and their capacity to harness the light of the sun, animal cells are shaped by a different philosophy of life, one that values movement, flexibility, and specialization in astonishing variety. These cells do not carry the sturdy framework of cellulose that locks them in place, nor do they contain the green chloroplasts that turn sunlight into sugars. Instead, their strength lies in adaptability, in the ability to change form, to move through tissues, and to take on roles as diverse as thought, contraction, digestion, and defense. In this way, animal cells form a society of remarkable complexity, a community where flexibility allows for cooperation at levels that give rise to senses, to behaviors, and to the dynamic lives of animals themselves. At the surface of the animal cell lies the plasma membrane, a thin, flexible boundary that defines the cell and separates it from its environment. Without the rigid wall of plants, this membrane allows animal cells to adopt many shapes. They can round themselves into spheres, stretch into long fibers, or flatten into thin sheets. Some extend fine projections that let them sense their environment or move across surfaces, while others fuse together to form tissues so seamless they seem like a single surface. The absence of a wall grants them freedom, but it also means vulnerability, and so the membrane must constantly regulate the flow of materials, ensuring balance is maintained. In this flexibility, we see both fragility and strength, a willingness to adapt that allows animal cells to create tissues of extraordinary diversity. One of the most striking features of animal cells is their specialization. While all animal cells share a common set of organelles, nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, and so forth, the way they express their functions varies widely. Muscle cells, for instance, are filled with fibers of actin and myosin that slide past one another, creating the contractions that power movement. Neurons are elongated and branching, designed to carry electrical impulses across great distances, allowing signals to pass from one part of the body to another with speed and precision. Red blood cells, by contrast, are stripped of their nucleus, their interiors filled almost entirely with hemoglobin, enabling them to carry oxygen through the bloodstream. Each of these forms is a reflection of the cell's purpose, and together they reveal the extraordinary adaptability of animal cells. Flexibility also shows itself in how animal cells interact. Because they lack rigid walls, they can form close and varied connections with one another. Some join tightly in sheets, creating barriers like the lining of the skin or the inner walls of the gut. Others form junctions that allow signals or small molecules to pass directly from one cell to another, coordinating their activity. Still others anchor themselves within a network of proteins outside the cell, a structure known as the extracellular matrix, which provides both support and pathways for communication. This ability to connect, to form and reform associations, allows animal cells to work together with precision, creating tissues that can contract, think, or defend, each one dependent on its neighbors. The mitochondria within animal cells are particularly vital, for animals cannot create their own food as plants do. Instead, they must consume organic molecules, breaking them down and converting them into usable energy. Mitochondria perform this conversion with remarkable efficiency, producing ATP, the energy currency of the cell, in amounts sufficient to power the demands of movement and thought. In muscle cells, mitochondria are numerous, fueling contractions during activity. In neurons, they sustain the constant electrical signaling that underlies sensation and memory. Without mitochondria, the energy needs of animals could never be met, and the dynamic lives of moving creatures would not be possible. Animal cells also demonstrate flexibility in how they change during growth and development. A fertilized egg begins as a single cell, and through countless divisions, it gives rise to an entire organism. As these cells divide, they differentiate, turning on some genes and silencing others until they take on specialized forms. From the same origin arise the cells of the skin, the liver, the brain, the heart, and every other tissue. The process is guided by chemical signals and interactions with neighboring cells, a dialogue that ensures each one takes on its proper role. This ability to diversify, to create so many forms from one beginning, is one of the most remarkable features of animal cells. It is flexibility carried to its highest expression, a reminder that from a single origin, complexity and variety can emerge. Animal cells also reveal their adaptability in defense. White blood cells, for example, patrol the body, searching for invaders such as bacteria or viruses. They can change their shape to move through tissues, extend arms of cytoplasm to engulf intruders, and release signals that call other cells to join the fight. This ability to shift form and function allows them to respond rapidly, protecting the body from harm. At the same time, other cells create antibodies, molecules that bind to invaders and mark them for destruction. Together, these defenses highlight the cooperative spirit of animal cells, each one flexible in its role, yet united in purpose. The nervous system provides another striking example. Neurons are specialized to carry electrical signals, but they do not work alone. They rely on glial cells, which support, nourish, and protect them. Some glial cells insulate neurons with layers of membrane, speeding the passage of signals. Others clear away debris or provide nutrients. This partnership shows how animal cells, in their diversity, remain dependent on one another, weaving networks of cooperation that sustain thought and sensation. In tissues such as muscle, flexibility becomes visible as movement itself. Muscle cells, or fibers, align in bundles, their contractile proteins sliding back and forth in waves. These contractions are controlled by electrical signals from neurons, a coordination that allows animals to move with grace, from the soaring of birds to the swimming of fish, to the quiet rise and fall of the human chest in sleep. Without the flexibility of animal cells, without their capacity to change shape and respond to signals, such motion would not exist. To reflect on animal cells is to reflect on diversity and cooperation, on the ways in which flexibility allows complexity. Unlike plant cells, they do not stand rigid within walls. Instead, they move, change, and connect in countless ways. This has allowed animals to evolve bodies with tissues and organs that perform highly specialized tasks. It has given rise to nervous systems that sense the world, to muscles that move through it, and to immune systems that protect against harm. It has allowed for growth from a single cell into a vast, coordinated organism, each part working in harmony with the rest. As you rest now, imagine drifting within the world of an animal cell. The membrane around you is soft and pliable, bending and shifting as needed. The cytoplasm flows like a gentle tide, carrying organelles that hum with purpose. The mitochondria glow with energy, fueling every quiet motion. The nucleus holds the instructions that guide the cell's role, while the cytoskeleton stretches and reshapes the interior with fluid grace. Around you, connections form and dissolve, signals pass, and the cell remains ever responsive, ever adaptable, ever alive. It is a world of flexibility, of change, and of cooperation. So let the thought of animal cells ease you further into calm. They are the architects of movement and sensation, the foundation of tissues and organs, the partners in every breath and every heartbeat. They remind us that life is not only about endurance and structure, as in the plant world, but also about adaptability and diversity, about the ability to change and connect. They are silent, yet they are dynamic. They are small, yet they create the great symphony of life we see in animals. And as you drift deeper into rest, you carry within you countless such cells, each one alive, each one flexible, each one part of the harmony that sustains you. 9. Communication between cells. Life is not sustained by cells acting in silence, each alone in its own space, but rather by their constant dialogue with one another. A single cell can perform many functions on its own, yet in the context of a larger organism, its true role emerges only through communication. Without the exchange of signals, the heart could not beat in rhythm, the brain could not form thoughts, and the immune system could not defend the body. Cells speak a language not of words but of molecules, of ions, of gentle electrical pulses, and subtle chemical messengers that drift between them. This conversation is ceaseless, unfolding at every moment within you as you rest. To explore it is to imagine a quiet symphony of messages, each note carrying meaning, each signal received and answered, ensuring that the harmony of life continues without pause. At the most fundamental level, communication allows cells to know their place within the whole. During the growth of an embryo, cells divide again and again, and at each step they must receive signals that tell them whether to keep dividing, to specialize into a certain type, or to pause and rest. These instructions come from neighboring cells and from the environment around them. They travel as small proteins, as lipids, or as other molecules that fit like keys into locks on the cell's surface. When the signal is received, the cell responds, turning genes on or off, changing its behavior, or adjusting its function. Without such communication, development would be chaos, and no organism could form with order or purpose. Cells also communicate to maintain balance in the adult body. This balance, called homeostasis, depends on constant adjustments guided by signals. When the body needs more energy, hormones such as insulin are released into the bloodstream, telling cells to take up glucose. When danger is sensed, stress hormones like adrenaline spread the message that the body must prepare to act. When infection occurs, immune cells release molecules called cytokines, summoning reinforcements to the site of injury. Each of these signals is like a voice calling out, and countless cells listen, interpret, and respond in unison. In this way, communication creates coordination, and coordination creates stability. There are many kinds of cellular communication, each suited to different distances and purposes. Some signals travel only to neighboring cells, slipping directly through small channels in the membrane known as gap junctions. These direct connections allow ions and small molecules to flow from one cell to another, enabling fast coordination. In the heart, for example, electrical signals pass through gap junctions, ensuring that muscle cells contract together in rhythm. Without this direct communication, the heart would lose its steady beat. Other signals act locally, diffusing only a short distance to nearby cells. This kind of paracrine signaling is used when tissues need to coordinate responses in a small area. In the skin, for instance, when cells are damaged, they release local signals that stimulate nearby cells to divide and repair the tissue. These signals do not travel far, but they are essential in healing and renewal. Some communication stretches farther, carried by the bloodstream to distant parts of the body. This is the realm of hormones, signals released by specialized cells and glands. A small gland in the brain can release hormones that influence the growth of bones, the function of the thyroid, or the production of reproductive cells. The pancreas releases insulin and glucagon, regulating blood sugar throughout the body. The adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline, influencing how energy is used in times of stress. These hormones drift like letters sent through a vast postal system, carried by blood to cells that bear the right receptors, where they are read and answered. There is also the fastest form of communication: electrical signaling in neurons. Neurons are specialized cells that can send impulses across long distances, carrying information in the form of changes in voltage along their membranes. At the end of one neuron, the signal is converted into a chemical form, released as neurotransmitters into a synapse, the tiny gap between cells. The next neuron receives the signal and passes it on, creating chains of communication that travel at remarkable speed. It is through these signals that thoughts form, that sensations are felt, that muscles are moved. Yet even here, the principle is the same: communication between cells, messages passed and received in endless patterns of connection. Cells also use communication to sense their environment. On their surfaces, proteins act as receptors, recognizing molecules outside the cell and transmitting signals inward. Some receptors detect the presence of nutrients, guiding the cell to take them in. Others detect the presence of toxins or stress, triggering protective responses. Still others act as antennae for hormones or growth factors, ensuring that the cell remains aware of the needs of the whole organism. It is as if each cell stands at a window, watching and listening, ready to respond when called upon. Even the immune system relies entirely on communication. When a virus enters the body, immune cells must recognize it as foreign. They then display fragments of the invader on their surfaces, showing these pieces to other cells like flags of warning. This begins a cascade of signals, with one cell releasing chemicals that attract others, with some cells multiplying rapidly, and with others producing antibodies to mark the invader for destruction. The immune response is not a single action, but a conversation, one that grows louder and more complex as more cells join in until the threat is overcome. Without communication, the immune system would be blind and silent. Communication is not only about response, but also about restraint. Cells must know when not to divide, when not to grow, when not to release signals. When communication fails, the harmony of the body is disrupted. Cells that ignore signals to stop dividing may become cancerous. Cells that fail to respond to insulin leave blood sugar unbalanced. These examples remind us gently that health is not just the activity of cells, but the quality of their communication, the clarity of the messages they exchange, the trust of their dialogue. It is soothing to imagine this vast web of signals as a network of quiet lights, each cell glowing as it sends and receives messages, pulses of information flowing like soft currents. In your body at this very moment, trillions of cells are engaged in this silent conversation. Nerve cells in the brain are exchanging neurotransmitters, shaping thought and memory. Heart cells are passing ions through gap junctions, keeping the beat steady. Hormones are drifting through the bloodstream, carrying messages about hunger, rest, and repair. Immune cells are whispering alerts, ever watchful, ever ready. You are not aware of these conversations, but they sustain you, moment by moment. As you listen and drift further into calm, let the image of cellular communication rest in your mind. It is the unseen language of life, a dialogue written not in words but in molecules and charges, in receptors and responses. It is a language every cell knows, a conversation that began billions of years ago when the first cells exchanged signals, and that continues now within you. To know this is to know that you are not a collection of silent parts, but a living symphony of communication. And as the signals flow, You may let yourself rest, carried by their rhythm, soothed by their constancy, comforted by the thought that life itself is a dialogue that never ends. Energy, energy, and cooperation. Life at every scale is powered by energy, and within the cell this truth is written into every moment. Without energy, there can be no movement, no thought, no growth, and no renewal. Cells are constantly engaged in the task of acquiring, transforming, and sharing energy, for it is the quiet current that sustains them. The way cells cooperate with one another in energy use is one of the most beautiful demonstrations of life's harmony. Together they form networks where energy flows are balanced, distributed, and maintained in ways that allow the organism as a whole to flourish. To reflect on this is to picture not only the spark within a single cell, but also the great web of energy that ties every cell in your body to its neighbors, and beyond that, connects you to the wider living world. At the heart of cellular energy lies a small molecule known as adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. This molecule can be thought of as the currency of energy. When ATP is broken down into adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, it releases a small burst of energy, just enough to fuel a chemical reaction or a mechanical movement. The production of ATP is constant and unending, for cells consume vast quantities of it every second. A single muscle cell, when contracting, can use millions of molecules of ATP in a fraction of a moment, yet it never runs dry, because its mitochondria are continuously producing more. This cycle, steady and reliable, is the foundation of cellular life. The mitochondria, often called the powerhouses of the cell, are the organelles most responsible for ATP production. They take in molecules of glucose and oxygen, and through a series of chemical steps known as cellular respiration, release their stored energy. The process begins in the cytoplasm, where glucose is broken down into smaller molecules in a pathway called glycolysis. The products of this step then enter the mitochondria, where they are further processed in the citric acid cycle. And finally, their electrons are passed along a chain of proteins in the inner mitochondrial membrane. With each transfer, energy is released, and this energy is used to pump protons across the membrane, creating a gradient. When the protons flow back through a channel, ATP is synthesized. This elegant system, known as oxidative phosphorylation, is one of the most efficient energy processes in nature, producing up to 30 molecules of ATP from a single molecule of glucose. Yet cells do not always rely on oxygen. When oxygen is scarce, as in strenuous exercise or in environments where it is limited, cells can turn to fermentation, producing ATP without the full efficiency of respiration. In muscle cells, this leads to the production of lactic acid, which accumulates until oxygen becomes available again. In yeast, fermentation produces ethanol and carbon dioxide, processes humans have long used to make bread, rise, and to brew wine. These alternative pathways remind us of the adaptability of life, the many ways cells can sustain themselves even under challenging conditions. But energy is not only about individual cells, it is also about cooperation between them. In your body right now, some cells are consuming energy at a high rate, while others are more at rest. Muscle cells during activity burn through glucose and oxygen, while fat cells act as storage sites, holding energy until it is needed. Liver cells regulate the levels of glucose in the blood, ensuring that other tissues receive enough. Red blood cells carry oxygen from the lungs to tissues, while returning carbon dioxide to be exhaled. Each of these roles is different, yet all are coordinated, part of a greater balance that keeps energy flowing to where it is most needed. Plants, too, show this cooperation. Within their cells, Chloroplasts capture the energy of sunlight and convert it into sugars. These sugars are transported through the phloem to other parts of the plant, where they are either used immediately or stored for later. Root cells, which cannot photosynthesize, depend on the sugars made in the leaves. In return, they absorb water and minerals from the soil, sending them upward to sustain the leaves. This exchange is a quiet dialogue of energy and resources, each cell type contributing what it can, each depending on the others. In multicellular organisms, energy cooperation extends to the highest levels. Consider the human brain, which, though it makes up only a small fraction of body mass, consumes about a fifth of all the energy produced. Neurons rely almost entirely on glucose and oxygen, and supporting glial cells ensure that they receive it. If the supply is interrupted even briefly, neurons begin to falter. To prevent this, the circulatory system, driven by the heartbeat, ensures a constant delivery of oxygen-rich blood to the brain. In this way, energy is not only produced, but shared, directed toward the cells that need it most. Even at the smallest scales, cooperation is evident. In many tissues, cells share energy directly through gap junctions, tiny channels that allow small molecules to pass from one cell to another. In the heart, for example, this ensures that muscle cells contract in unison, powered by the shared flow of ions and signals. In the liver, cells can transfer metabolites back and forth, balancing workloads so that no single cell is overwhelmed. These connections are reminders that life is not an isolated effort, but a continuous collaboration. Energy also flows beyond the boundaries of one organism. The sugars made in plant cells become food for animals. The oxygen released in photosynthesis becomes fuel for cellular respiration in countless beings. When animals eat plants or other animals, the energy stored in their cells is passed along, transformed, and used anew. This great cycle, stretching from sunlight to chloroplasts to mitochondria, is one of the central rhythms of life on Earth. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every movement is part of this cycle, sustained by the quiet cooperation of cells near and far. As you rest now, it is soothing to imagine this energy, not as something abstract, but as a gentle light that flows through you. Picture the mitochondria within your cells glowing softly, each one releasing energy in small bursts, fueling the movements of proteins, the transport of molecules, the firing of neurons. Imagine the red blood cells drifting past, carrying oxygen to every tissue, ensuring that the mitochondria can continue their work. Imagine the liver quietly balancing the flow of glucose, the muscles storing or releasing fuel, the fat cells holding reserves like lanterns waiting to be lit. This light is not hurried, not fierce, but steady, a quiet flame that has burned in living cells for billions of years. Energy is life's most constant companion. It flows through the smallest bacterium and the largest animal, through the leaf of a tree and the neuron of a human brain. It is captured, transformed, shared, and renewed, never destroyed, but always moving in new forms. And at every step, cells cooperate, ensuring that this current remains unbroken. To reflect on this is to feel connected, not only to your own cells, but to the entire web of life, all of which shares in the same energy, the same quiet flame. So, as your breathing slows, let the thought of energy and cooperation settle gently within you. You are sustained by countless cells, each one producing and sharing energy, each one playing its part in the harmony of life. Their cooperation is your life, their quiet labor, your strength, their steady rhythms, your calm, and as they continue their ceaseless work, you are free to drift deeper into rest, carried by the soft glow of the energy that unites all living things. 11. building tissues. As we move further along this quiet journey into the life of cells, we come now to a point where the cooperation of individual units becomes something greater than themselves. A single cell can live, breathe, and sustain itself, but when many come together in unity, something new emerges. Tissues. These are collections of similar cells, bound by common purpose, working not as isolated individuals but as members of a collective body. Tissues are the first step in the ascent from the microscopic to the macroscopic, from the invisible world of single cells to the living forms we can see and touch. To reflect on tissues is to reflect on the beauty of organization, on the way cooperation gives rise to structure, and on the truth that life's harmony is always built upon the quiet efforts of many. In humans and other animals, there are 4 primary kinds of tissues, each with its own nature and role. The first is epithelial tissue, the covering and lining of the body. These are the cells that form the skin, that line the digestive tract, that create the walls of organs and vessels. They are closely packed, like bricks in a wall, sealing off spaces and creating boundaries between the inside and the outside. They protect, they absorb, they secrete, and they regulate. Without epithelial tissues, the body would have no surface, no barrier, no gateway for the controlled exchange of materials. Their cooperation forms the skin that shields us, the linings that nourish us, and the delicate membranes that allow oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass with each breath. The second kind is connective tissue, a category broad and varied, yet unified by the role of support. Connective tissues hold the body together, giving strength and elasticity, linking structures in a network of resilience. Some connective tissues are dense and strong, like tendons and ligaments that anchor muscles to bones and bones to each other. Some are loose and flexible, filling spaces and cushioning organs. Bone itself is a connective tissue, hard yet alive, filled with cells that build and repair, that store minerals, and that provide the scaffolding upon which muscles act. Cartilage, another form, gives shape to ears and noses, cushions, joints, and forms the early framework of the skeleton in the embryo. Even blood is considered a connective tissue, though its form is fluid, for it connects every part of the body through its circulation, carrying oxygen, nutrients, and signals. To see connective tissue is to see the quiet strength of unity, fibers and cells woven together into a fabric that supports life. The third kind of tissue is muscle, and in it we see the power of movement. Muscle cells are elongated, filled with fibers that contract and relax in waves, generating force. Skeletal muscle allows voluntary movement, lifting limbs, walking, speaking, breathing. Smooth muscle, quieter and slower, lines the walls of internal organs, guiding the flow of food through the intestines, regulating blood vessels, moving air through the lungs. Cardiac muscle, found only in the heart, beats without rest, its cells joined by special connections that allow them to contract together in perfect rhythm. Muscle tissue is life in motion, energy transformed into action, strength guided by signals. It is one of the clearest expressions of cellular cooperation, for no single muscle cell can achieve much alone. Only together, in bundles and sheets, do they create the movements that define animal life. The fourth type of tissue is nervous tissue, a web of communication and sensation. Here, neurons stretch their long projections across distances, passing signals in the form of electricity and chemicals, linking one cell to another in chains that extend through the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Alongside them, glial cells provide support, nourishment, and protection. Together they form the fabric of thought and awareness, of reflex and memory. Nervous tissue is the seat of sensation and control, the medium through which the body perceives the world and responds to it. In its networks, millions of cells act together, their cooperation giving rise to something greater than themselves: consciousness, awareness, and the subtle patterns of thought. These four tissues, epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous, form the foundation of the animal body. They are not isolated, but interwoven, layered together to form organs. In the heart, muscle tissue contracts, connective tissue provides structure, epithelial tissue lines the chambers, and nervous tissue coordinates the rhythm. In the skin, epithelial cells form the outer barrier, connective tissue lies beneath to give strength, muscle fibers adjust tiny hairs, and nerve endings bring sensation. Every part of the body is a tapestry woven from these tissues, each contributing its thread to the larger whole. The cooperation of cells and tissues is a reminder of the principle of emergent properties, that when parts come together, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. A single epithelial cell can form a barrier, but an entire sheet of them creates a protective skin. A single muscle cell can contract, but thousands together form movement strong enough to walk or run. A single neuron can fire, but networks of billions form thought. Tissues are the first step in this unfolding, the moment when individual efforts merge into collective function, when the invisible becomes visible. To imagine tissues is to imagine landscapes of cells, each specialized, each in its place. Picture the skin, its outermost layer of epithelial cells packed tightly, overlapping like tiles on a roof, shielding the body from the world outside. Beneath, connective tissues form a cushion, interlaced with blood vessels carrying nourishment and nerves carrying sensation. Within muscles, long fibers stretch and align, contracting and relaxing with each breath. In the brain, neurons spread their branches, reaching out to thousands of partners, their connections forming a forest of communication. These tissues are not static, but living, renewing themselves as cells die and are replaced, repairing themselves after injury, adapting to the demands placed upon them. Even plants show a similar organization, though their tissues are different in name and form. Dermal tissues cover the surface, protecting the plant and regulating water loss. Vascular tissues, the xylem and phloem, carry water, minerals, and sugars from one part to another. Ground tissue fills the spaces between, supporting, storing, and photosynthesizing. As in animals, plant tissues are built from cells that cooperate, each contributing to the function of the whole. It is a reminder that the principle of tissues is universal, cells working together in unity, creating forms larger and more complex than themselves. As you rest, it may be soothing to imagine yourself within the fabric of a tissue, surrounded by cells of the same kind, each one alive, each one contributing. Around you, connections form, signals pass, and together you create something greater than any one cell could achieve. The tissue stretches like a field, a repeating pattern of life, quiet yet purposeful. It is not chaotic, but ordered, not solitary, but communal. It is life's first great step toward complexity, the weaving of the many into the one. So let the thought of tissues accompany you into calm. They are the architecture of the body, the first expression of cooperation beyond the single cell. They remind us that life's strength lies in unity, that structure arises from connection, and that harmony is built upon the efforts of many. Every movement, every sensation, every thought is made possible because cells join together to form tissues, and tissues join together to form organs, and organs join together to form you. In this quiet realization, you may let yourself drift deeper, held by the knowledge that you are not only made of countless cells, but of tissues woven from them, strong, resilient, and endlessly alive. 12. Organs as teams of tissues. As we journey deeper into the quiet intricacies of life, we find that tissues, remarkable as they are, do not exist in isolation. Just as individual cells gather into tissues to create new levels of function, so too do tissues assemble into larger structures known as organs. An organ is more than a collection of tissue. It is a living team, a coordinated unit where different tissue types work together with a common purpose. The word itself suggests organization and harmony, much like a musical instrument producing sound when all of its parts work in tune. To reflect on organs is to reflect on cooperation elevated to a higher plane, where many voices blend into one, where complexity gives rise to unity, and where the quiet work of cells becomes visible in the structure and function of the body. An organ can be small, like the eye, or vast, like the skin, which covers the entire surface of the body. What unites them all is the principle that no tissue within them can act alone. In the heart, for example, muscle tissue contracts rhythmically, creating the beat that propels blood. Connective tissue strengthens and supports the heart's walls and anchors its valves. Epithelial tissue lines the chambers, smoothing the passage of blood and secreting small amounts of fluid to prevent friction. Nervous tissue sends signals that regulate the timing and strength of each contraction. None of these tissues could pump blood alone, but together they form an organ that sustains life with each beat. The heart, like all organs, is a symphony of tissues working in harmony. Consider also the lungs, organs that bring the breath of air into contact with the blood. Within them, epithelial cells line the delicate air sacs called alveoli, so thin that gases can diffuse across them with ease. Connective tissue supports these sacs, giving them elasticity so they can expand and contract. Capillaries, filled with blood, weave through this tissue, lined by their own epithelial cells. Smooth muscle tissue surrounds the bronchioles, adjusting airflow, while nervous tissue coordinates breathing with the body's needs. It is through this collaboration that oxygen enters the blood and carbon dioxide leaves it, a quiet exchange that happens effortlessly with every breath. Without the coordination of these tissues, the simple act of breathing could not sustain life. The stomach, another organ, reveals a different kind of teamwork. Its walls are layered, with epithelial tissue forming the inner lining, secreting acids and enzymes that digest food. Beneath this lies connective tissue, holding everything together and carrying blood vessels that bring nourishment and remove waste. Smooth muscle tissue forms additional layers, contracting rhythmically to churn food and mix it with digestive juices. Nervous tissue regulates the contractions and responds to signals from the brain, ensuring that digestion occurs at the right pace. No one tissue digests food by itself. Digestion is the result of many tissues acting in concert, coordinated within the structure of the stomach. The skin, the largest organ of the human body, shows another expression of unity. Its outer layer, the epidermis, is made of epithelial cells that form a protective barrier, preventing water loss and blocking harmful substances. Beneath it lies the dermis, a connective tissue rich in collagen and elastin fibers, giving strength and flexibility. Blood vessels thread through the dermis, nourishing the skin, while nerve endings bring sensation. Small muscles attach to hair follicles, raising hairs in response to cold or emotion. Sweat glands and oil glands, also formed from epithelial tissue, open onto the surface, regulating temperature and maintaining moisture. The skin is not simply a covering, it is a living organ, a complex system where multiple tissues unite to protect, sense, and regulate. Every organ in the body can be described in this way, a blending of tissues into a functional whole. The brain, with its billions of neurons and supporting glial cells, works with connective tissues that protect it, epithelial tissues that form barriers, and blood vessels that nourish it. The kidneys filter blood through specialized epithelial cells, supported by connective tissue, aided by smooth muscle that adjusts flow, all under the regulation of nervous signals. The liver processes nutrients, detoxifies substances, and stores energy, its functions arising from the cooperation of many tissues woven together. Each organ is a story of collaboration, of tissues finding strength in unity. The beauty of organs lies not only in their internal teamwork, but also in the way they connect to one another. The heart pumps blood, but its rhythm would be meaningless without lungs to oxygenate that blood, without kidneys to filter it, without intestines to supply nutrients, and without the brain to regulate demand. Each organ depends on others, forming systems that interlock into the greater whole of the organism. The digestive system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the respiratory system, each is composed of organs, and each organ is composed of tissues, and each tissue is composed of cells. This hierarchy, from smallest to largest, is the architecture of life, a cascade of cooperation that builds complexity from simplicity. It is soothing to imagine this hierarchy as a series of nested harmonies. At the base, cells hum with their quiet rhythms. Together, they form tissues, which add depth and strength. The tissues then gather into organs, which play fuller melodies, each tuned to a particular role. When all organs join in the concert of the body, the result is the living symphony that sustains you. Every beat of your heart, every breath of your lungs, every thought of your mind is a note in this greater music. It is a harmony so constant and seamless that you may rarely notice it, yet it carries you through every moment of life. The cooperation of tissues within organs also shows us resilience. When one tissue is damaged, others often step in to compensate. In the liver, for instance, epithelial cells have remarkable regenerative abilities, able to divide and replace damaged parts. In the skin, connective tissue forms scars to restore integrity after injury. In the heart, while muscle cells do not regenerate easily, connective tissue and blood vessels adapt to support surviving tissue. This resilience is another form of teamwork, another expression of unity, ensuring that the organ and the body as a whole can endure and continue. As you rest, imagine yourself drifting through the chambers of an organ, perhaps the heart, where muscle fibers contract in waves, connective tissue holds strong, epithelial linings smooth the flow, and nervous impulses guide the rhythm. Or the lungs, where air moves softly into alveoli, where gases pass quietly across thin membranes, and where blood cells carry oxygen away in silence. Each organ is a landscape, filled with cells and tissues working together, their cooperation invisible yet essential. To picture this is to find calm, to see that within you there is order and harmony, an endless teamwork that sustains your being. Organs are not isolated machines but living communities, each one a gathering of tissues, each tissue a gathering of cells, each cell a gathering of molecules. The cooperation that builds them is profound, for it shows us that life is always about connection, about the many working together to create the one. The heart cannot be a heart without its tissues, and the tissues cannot exist without their cells. Each level depends on the one below, and together they create something greater than themselves. This is the essence of organs, the emergence of unity from diversity, of function from cooperation. So, let this thought settle gently within you. Your body is composed of organs, each one a quiet team, each one a harmony of tissues and cells. Their cooperation is continuous, their work unceasing, yet they ask nothing of you in return. They beat, breathe, filter, digest, sense, and protect, not with noise or demand, but with quiet constancy. To reflect on this is to feel comfort, for you are sustained by their harmony, carried by their teamwork, and supported by their unity. And as you drift into deeper rest, you may let yourself be held by the thought that within you, countless small teams are at work, each one part of the greater whole, each one ensuring that life continues in quiet balance. 13. The circulatory system's cellular network. Among the many systems of the body, few reveal the importance of cellular cooperation more beautifully than the circulatory system. It is a vast network, a flowing river within you, carrying life to every corner of your body. At its heart is blood, a living tissue composed of cells, suspended in fluid, moving through vessels that reach from the largest arteries to the finest capillaries. These cells do not work in isolation but in harmony, each with its own role, each supporting the others, so that the entire organism can be nourished, protected, and sustained. To reflect on this is to picture an endless circulation, a quiet current that moves day and night without pause, an inner world of motion, where cellular teamwork creates the miracle of life's continuity. Blood itself is not a single substance but a collection of parts, each essential. Plasma, the pale fluid, forms the medium in which all else floats. It carries water, salts, nutrients, hormones, and waste products. It is the river in which the cellular boats drift, a highway of molecules that ensures communication between distant organs. Yet the true actors of this network are the cells themselves, each with a defined role, each contributing to the balance. Red blood cells carry oxygen, white blood cells defend against invaders, and platelets maintain the integrity of vessels by repairing damage. Together, they transform plasma from a simple fluid into a living tissue of extraordinary complexity. Red blood cells, or erythrocytes, are perhaps the most numerous of all. In every drop of blood, millions are present, each a small, disc-shaped carrier of oxygen. Their structure is simple, yet perfectly suited to their task. They lack a nucleus in most organelles, leaving space for hemoglobin, the protein that binds oxygen. As blood flows through the lungs, oxygen molecules slip into the red blood cells, attaching to hemoglobin. Carried through the arteries, these cells then release oxygen to tissues in need, while at the same time collecting carbon dioxide, the waste of metabolism, to return it to the lungs for exhalation. This endless shuttle of gases is what allows every cell in the body to breathe, though silently, invisibly. Red blood cells live for about 4 months, after which they are replaced by new ones formed in the bone marrow, a reminder that even in this ceaseless flow, renewal is always present. White blood cells, or leukocytes, are fewer in number, but no less vital. They are the defenders, the guardians of the body, standing watch for any sign of infection or harm. Some, like neutrophils, are swift responders, rushing to sites of injury or invasion, engulfing bacteria and releasing chemicals to destroy them. Others, like lymphocytes, are more specialized. B cells produce antibodies, molecules that recognize specific invaders and mark them for destruction, while T cells coordinate responses, destroy infected cells, and regulate the immune system's balance. Monocytes, which can become macrophages, patrol tissues, and engulf debris. Eosinophils and basophils play roles in defense against parasites and in allergic reactions. Together, these white blood cells form a network of vigilance, their cooperation, ensuring that threats are met with precision and strength. Platelets, though not full cells but fragments of larger precursors, are no less essential. They patrol the bloodstream, and when a vessel is injured, they gather at the site, adhering to the damaged wall and to one another. They release chemicals that attract more platelets, and together they form a clot, a temporary seal that prevents blood loss. At the same time, they trigger a cascade of proteins in plasma that weave threads of fibrin, reinforcing the clot. This process is both rapid and precise, for too little clotting would lead to bleeding, while too much could block vessels. Platelets, though small and simple, embody the principle of balance, their cooperation with plasma proteins, ensuring that integrity is maintained. All of these cellular roles depend on the pathways through which blood flows. Arteries carry blood outward from the heart, their walls thick and elastic to withstand pressure. Veins return blood, their thinner walls aided by valves that prevent backflow. Between them lie the capillaries, vessels so fine that red blood cells must squeeze through single file. It is here, in these narrow channels, that exchange occurs. Oxygen leaves the blood, carbon dioxide enters, nutrients pass into tissues, waste products are carried away. It is a meeting place, a bridge between the circulatory network and every other system of the body. Without capillaries, the river of blood would remain isolated. With them, it touches every cell. The heart is the engine of this network, a muscular organ that pumps blood ceaselessly. Within its chambers, muscle cells contract in perfect synchrony, driven by electrical signals that spread across the tissue. Valves open and close, guiding the flow, ensuring that blood moves forward and never backward. Each beat is both simple and profound, a wave of muscle contraction that sustains the circulation of blood throughout the body. The heart does not rest, for its rhythm is the rhythm of life itself, and its teamwork of muscle, connective, epithelial, and nervous tissues exemplifies the unity required to sustain the circulatory system. This system is not isolated from others. It works hand in hand with the respiratory system, bringing oxygen from the lungs to tissues. It works with the digestive system, carrying nutrients absorbed from food to cells. It works with the excretory system, delivering waste to the kidneys for removal. It works with the endocrine system, carrying hormones to distant organs. It works with the immune system, transporting white blood cells to sites of need. Every other system depends on the circulatory network, and the circulatory network depends on the cells within it, tirelessly flowing, tirelessly cooperating. It is soothing to imagine this circulation within you now. Picture red blood cells gliding gently along narrow vessels, their hemoglobin glowing faintly with oxygen. Picture white blood cells drifting watchfully, ready to respond if called. Picture platelets floating silently, waiting until they are needed. Around them, plasma carries nutrients, hormones, and signals, ensuring that every cell in your body remains connected. The heart beats softly in the distance, each contraction sending another wave of life through the network. It is a current that never falters, a tide that ebbs and flows without pause, sustaining you even as you rest. The circulatory system is, at its core, a story of cooperation. Red blood cells alone could carry oxygen, but without the heart, they would not reach their destinations. White blood cells alone could defend, but without the bloodstream, they could not patrol. Platelets alone could form clots, but without plasma proteins, they could not complete the seal. Plasma alone could carry molecules, but without the cells, it would lack vitality. Only together do they form a living tissue, a moving river, a system that nourishes, defends, repairs, and connects. So let this thought accompany you now. Within you flows a network of life, a circulatory system powered by countless cells working in harmony. Their cooperation is constant, their labor unceasing, yet it is quiet, invisible, effortless from your perspective. You do not feel the millions of red blood cells releasing oxygen, the white blood cells watching for invaders, the platelets preparing for repair, yet they are there, always. You are carried by their unity, sustained by their flow, and as you drift deeper into rest, you may find comfort in the knowledge that within you, an endless river of life is moving, guided by the teamwork of cells, flowing in harmony and sustaining the calm rhythm of your existence. 14. Neurons and glial cells in concert. Within the body, there is a system that communicates faster than any other, one that carries signals across vast networks in the blink of an eye. This is the nervous system, and at its heart are two types of cells that live in constant partnership: neurons and glial cells. Neurons are the messengers, the cells that carry impulses and transmit information. Glial cells are their companions, the guardians, providers, and supporters that make the work of neurons possible. Together they form one of the most intricate and delicate collaborations in biology, a living network where thought, sensation, and movement emerge, not from solitary effort, but from cooperation. To reflect on this partnership is to reflect on the nature of connection itself, for in the dialogue of neurons and glia we see how individual parts join to create awareness, memory, and the quiet hum of consciousness. A neuron is a specialized cell with a shape unlike most others. It has a body, or soma, which houses the nucleus and the machinery needed for the cell's survival. Extending from the soma are dendrites, branching projections that receive signals from other neurons, and a long extension known as the axon, which carries impulses away from the cell body. At the far end of the axon lie terminals that release neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that cross the small space, or synapse, to the dendrites of another neuron. In this way, neurons form vast chains of communication, electrical impulses traveling along axons, chemical signals leaping across synapses, messages flowing continuously from one cell to the next. The human brain alone contains billions of neurons, each one making thousands of connections, forming networks so intricate that they give rise to every thought and memory you have ever known. But neurons do not stand alone, nor could they survive if they did. They are supported by glial cells, which outnumber neurons in the nervous system and provide essential roles. Some glial cells act as scaffolds during development, guiding neurons to their proper places as the brain takes shape. Others insulate axons with layers of myelin, speeding the transmission of electrical impulses so that messages travel with both swiftness and efficiency. Still others supply nutrients, regulate the chemical environment, and remove waste. Some act as guardians, protecting neurons from pathogens and repairing damage when it occurs. Without glial cells, neurons would falter, their signals would fail, and the delicate networks of the nervous system could not endure. One of the most remarkable aspects of this partnership is the myelination provided by certain glial cells. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes wrap their membranes around axons, creating sheaths of myelin. In the peripheral nervous system, Schwann cells perform the same task. These myelin sheaths act as insulators, allowing impulses to jump from one gap to the next in a process called saltatory conduction. This makes signal transmission far faster than it would otherwise be. The difference is profound. Without myelin, signals crawl slowly along the axon. With myelin, they leap swiftly, allowing the body to respond to the world with speed and precision. Every movement of your hand, every flicker of thought, depends on this collaboration between neurons and their glial companions. Glial cells also maintain the environment in which neurons function. Astrocytes, star-shaped glial cells in the brain, help regulate the balance of ions and neurotransmitters around neurons, ensuring that signals remain clear and controlled. They provide nutrients, drawing them from blood vessels and delivering them to neurons, which are highly demanding cells with great energy needs. They also contribute to the blood-brain barrier, a protective shield that regulates which substances from the bloodstream can enter the brain, protecting its delicate networks from toxins or fluctuations. Astrocytes are quiet caretakers, ensuring that neurons can continue their work undisturbed, their signals unclouded. Another group of glial cells, microglia, serve as the immune defenders of the nervous system. They constantly patrol, extending and retracting their fine processes, sensing the environment for signs of infection or injury. When trouble is detected, they spring into action, engulfing debris, clearing away damaged cells, and releasing signals that guide the repair process. They are the guardians of the nervous tissue, ensuring that the network remains safe and functional. In their vigilance, they show us once again that even the most specialized cells depend on companions for protection and care. The cooperation of neurons and glial cells is not only structural but functional. In the brain, neurons transmit impulses that underlie sensation, thought, and action. But glial cells shape the very patterns of these signals. They modulate synaptic activity, influence which connections are strengthened and which are weakened, and thereby play a role in learning and memory. The brain is not simply a mass of neurons firing. It is a community where neurons and glia together sculpt the pathways of thought. This partnership shows that intelligence, memory, and consciousness are not the work of one cell type alone, but the product of collaboration at every level. To appreciate this, one might imagine a vast forest at night. The neurons are like the trees, tall and branching, their outlines forming the visible structure. But the life of the forest depends just as much on the soil, the water, the unseen roots, and the creatures that move among the trees. The glial cells are these hidden forces, supporting, nourishing, protecting. Without them, the trees could not stand. Without neurons, the forest would have no visible form. Together, they create the living whole. Even in the simplest reflex, such as pulling your hand away from something hot, the partnership is evident. A neuron in your skin senses the heat and sends a signal along its axon. This signal is passed to another neuron in the spinal cord, which then activates motor neurons that contract the muscles of your arm. The entire action happens in an instant, yet it is only possible because glial cells maintain the speed and clarity of the signals, feed the neurons the energy they need, and protect them from harm. Something so simple, so immediate, is in truth a concert of cellular cooperation. It is soothing to reflect on how these cells, in their endless communication, create the quiet backdrop of your own awareness. As you rest now, your neurons are firing gently, sustaining thought and memory even as you drift. Glial cells are at work around them, feeding them, insulating them, keeping them safe. The dialogue between them is constant, but it is not loud or chaotic. It is a gentle hum, a background rhythm that has been with you from the beginning and will continue through every moment of life. This partnership also reminds us of the theme we have seen again and again, that no cell, however remarkable, achieves its purpose alone. Neurons are often celebrated as the most important cells of the nervous system, yet without glia, they could not survive. Glia do not carry electrical impulses, but without neurons, their support would have no direction. Together, they form the nervous system, and together, they give rise to the experiences, thoughts, and movements that define life. Their cooperation is profound, for from it emerges something larger than either could create alone: awareness itself. So as you let your thoughts soften and your breathing slow, imagine the partnership of neurons and glial cells as a quiet concert. The neurons are the musicians, sending out melodies in the form of impulses, while the glial cells are the stagehands, the caretakers, the guides, ensuring that the music is clear, sustained, and uninterrupted. The result is the symphony of the nervous system, the song of life itself. You do not need to listen actively, for it continues on its own, steady and sure, carrying you gently into deeper rest. 15. The immune system's defense collective. Within the body, countless systems cooperate to sustain life, each with its own quiet purpose. Among them, the immune system stands as a vigilant guardian, a collective of cells, always on watch, always ready to defend, yet doing so in a way that is deeply coordinated, deeply cooperative. It is not a single organ but a network, woven through blood, tissues, and lymph, carried out by cells that specialize in recognition, memory, and action. The immune system is both humble and extraordinary, for it is composed of small individual players, white blood cells, and their partners, that together form a collective defense greater than the sum of its parts. To reflect on this system is to reflect on the nature of vigilance, on the balance of protection and restraint, and on the remarkable ways cells work together to keep life safe. At its foundation, the immune system is made of many types of white blood cells, each with its own task, each linked to the others by a constant exchange of signals. Neutrophils are among the first responders. They patrol the blood in large numbers, and when an injury or infection occurs, they are quick to arrive. They engulf bacteria, breaking them down, and they release chemicals that signal to other immune cells. Their lives are short, but their speed and readiness make them invaluable in the first stages of defense. Around them, other cells take on complementary roles, extending the protection in more specific directions. Macrophages are larger cells, long-lived, and deeply versatile. They too engulf invaders, but they also act as messengers, presenting pieces of what they consume to other immune cells, thereby teaching the system what it must defend against. They are both warriors and teachers, defenders and communicators. Dendritic cells carry out a similar role, extending fine projections that capture information from the environment, and then carrying it to the lymph nodes, where other cells are waiting. In this way, the immune system is not blind or random, but informed, capable of learning, and capable of remembering. This memory is most clearly seen in the lymphocytes, the B cells and T cells that provide specificity. B cells are responsible for producing antibodies, proteins that recognize invaders with remarkable precision. Each B cell can make one kind of antibody, and when it encounters a matching intruder, it multiplies, releasing countless antibodies into the bloodstream. These antibodies attach to the invader, marking it for destruction by other cells, or sometimes neutralizing it directly. T cells, on the other hand, perform several roles. Some, called helper T cells, coordinate the immune response, releasing signals that guide B cells and other T cells into action. Others, called cytotoxic T cells, directly kill cells that have been infected by viruses, sparing the body from further harm. Together, B cells and T cells form the adaptive immune system, a part of immunity that learns, remembers, and responds more strongly each time it meets the same threat. The cooperation of these cells is extraordinary. At the site of infection, neutrophils swarm, macrophages engulf, dendritic cells gather fragments and carry them away. In the lymph nodes, B cells and T cells study these fragments, multiplying if they recognize them. Signals flow between them in the form of cytokines, small molecules that guide and coordinate. Some signals call for reinforcement, some for restraint, some encourage growth and division, others bring the process to a close. It is not chaos, but a carefully balanced dialogue, a conversation carried out in molecules and receptors, each cell speaking and listening, each adjusting to the needs of the whole. This balance is essential, for the immune system must protect without harming. If it is too weak, infections take hold. If it is too strong or misdirected, it can damage the body itself. Autoimmune diseases arise when the immune system mistakes the self for an enemy, attacking tissues that should be left unharmed. Allergies occur when harmless substances are treated as threats, provoking unnecessary responses. These conditions remind us gently that even the most vigilant system must be guided by balance, that protection requires not only strength but wisdom. The immune system is also not limited to responding to threats. It also plays a role in healing and renewal. After injury, immune cells arrive to clear debris, to remove damaged tissue, and to signal the growth of new cells. They work alongside other systems, supporting the repair process, ensuring that wounds close and tissues regain their strength. They are not only defenders but caretakers, guardians not only of survival but of recovery. This dual role, both protective and restorative, shows the depth of their cooperation, the breadth of their service. The story of the immune system is also a story of memory. Once B cells and T cells have encountered a particular invader, some of them remain as memory cells. These cells persist long after the infection has passed, ready to respond more quickly and more strongly if the same invader returns. This is the principle behind vaccination, which introduces a harmless form of a pathogen so that the immune system may learn and remember without risk. The next time the true invader appears, the immune system is already prepared, its collective memory guiding a swift and effective defense. In this way, the immune system is not static but adaptive, growing wiser with each encounter, carrying the lessons of the past into the future. It is soothing to imagine this defense as a silent patrol, a network of guardians moving quietly through the bloodstream and tissues. Neutrophils drift in large numbers, always ready. Macrophages stand watch in the tissues, their arms extended, sensing the environment. Dendritic cells carry their messages to distant nodes, where B cells and T cells wait like students eager to learn. Signals pass between them, invisible yet constant, guiding their actions. In times of peace, they remain calm, watchful. In times of challenge, they rise together, coordinated, precise. Even now, as you rest, your immune system is at work. It is sensing, patrolling, maintaining. It is not loud, and you do not feel its activity, yet it is always present. Every cut that heals, every small infection overcome, every balance maintained is the work of countless immune cells cooperating in silence. They do not ask for notice, but they serve without pause, their collective effort a quiet assurance of safety. The immune system is another reminder of the larger theme we have seen again and again, that life depends on cooperation. No single immune cell can defend the body alone. A neutrophil may engulf, but without macrophages to communicate, its work would be incomplete. A B cell may make antibodies, but without T cells to guide it, it would not know when to act. A T cell may destroy infected cells, but without signals from others, it would not know which targets to pursue. Only together, in their constant dialogue, do they form a defense capable of protecting the whole. So let this thought rest gently in your mind. Within you lives a defense collective, an immune system composed of countless cells working in harmony. They watch, they remember, they act, and they heal. They are vigilant yet balanced, strong yet restrained, always present, always united. You need not command them, for their wisdom is ancient, carried through countless generations of life. As you drift into deeper rest, you are held by their vigilance, protected by their unity, sustained by their quiet, ceaseless work. 16. Hormones and endocrine signals. Among the countless ways cells cooperate, few are as subtle and far-reaching as the exchange of hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers, released into the bloodstream by specialized cells, traveling across great distances to influence the activity of other cells in distant tissues. Unlike the rapid electrical impulses of neurons, hormones move more slowly, carried by the steady flow of blood. Yet their effects are profound and enduring. They regulate growth and development, metabolism and energy balance, reproduction and mood. To reflect on hormones and endocrine signals is to reflect on the quiet wisdom of the body, for these messengers guide the rhythms of life in ways so constant and seamless that we often take them for granted. The endocrine system is not one organ but a collection of glands scattered throughout the body, each with its own role, each releasing hormones that act far beyond their origin. At the base of the brain lies the hypothalamus, a small yet powerful region that links the nervous system with the endocrine system. It senses the body's internal state temperature, hunger, thirst, stress, and sends signals to the pituitary gland, often called the master gland. The pituitary, in turn, releases hormones that regulate other glands, the thyroid in the neck, the adrenal glands above the kidneys, the gonads in the reproductive system. This hierarchy ensures that the body remains coordinated, that no part acts alone, but all respond to the needs of the whole. The thyroid gland produces hormones that regulate metabolism, the pace at which cells consume energy. When thyroid hormones are abundant, the body's processes quicken. When they are scarce, they slow. This fine-tuning ensures balance, preventing both exhaustion and stagnation. The adrenal glands, perched like small caps above the kidneys, release hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, guiding the body's response to stress. In moments of challenge, adrenaline increases heart rate and breathing, preparing the body for action. Cortisol helps regulate energy availability, ensuring that fuel is ready when needed. Together, they form part of the body's ancient system for survival, always ready to shift balance in response to change. The pancreas, both an endocrine and digestive organ, produces insulin and glucagon, hormones that regulate blood sugar. Insulin signals cells to take in glucose after meals, lowering blood sugar levels and providing energy for use or storage. Glucagon has the opposite effect, releasing glucose from reserves when the body needs fuel between meals or during fasting. These two hormones act in opposition, yet their dialogue is cooperative, maintaining a stable balance that supports every cell in the body. Without this balance, life becomes unstable, as seen in diabetes, where the regulation of blood sugar falters. Here again, we see the importance of communication, the necessity of harmony. In the reproductive system, hormones guide development and function. In females, the ovaries release estrogen and progesterone, regulating cycles, preparing the body for pregnancy, and influencing secondary traits. In males, the testes produce testosterone, guiding development and maintaining reproductive function. These hormones also affect mood, bone health, muscle mass, and more, reminding us that their influence extends far beyond reproduction itself. Their presence demonstrates how the endocrine system weaves its signals into every corner of life, from the beginning of development to the later stages of aging. Even growth itself is guided by hormones. The pituitary gland releases growth hormone, which stimulates tissues to divide and expand, bones to lengthen, and muscles to strengthen. This process is most visible in childhood and adolescence, but it continues subtly throughout life, aiding in repair and renewal. Without growth hormone, tissues would weaken, and the balance of development would falter. With it, the body maintains not only size, but also resilience, adapting and renewing even in adulthood. The beauty of hormones lies not only in their diversity, but also in their reach. A single hormone, released by a small cluster of cells, can influence trillions of cells throughout the body. When insulin enters the bloodstream, every cell with a receptor for it can respond, taking in glucose and adjusting its metabolism. When thyroid hormone rises, every cell increases its pace. This is communication on a grand scale, a whisper from one place carried everywhere, guiding the body with quiet precision. It is a reminder that unity is not only local but global, that the body is more than a collection of parts, but a system linked by signals that flow ceaselessly through the blood. There is also a profound adaptability in endocrine signals. When demands increase, glands release more hormones. When balance is restored, they release less. Feedback loops ensure that no hormone acts unchecked. For example, when thyroid hormone levels rise too high, the pituitary reduces its release of thyroid-stimulating hormone, bringing levels back to normal. These loops are elegant examples of self-regulation, a dialogue between glands and tissues that maintains balance without conscious effort. They are cycles of correction, rhythms of stability, the quiet guardians of homeostasis. Hormones also remind us of the unity of body and mind. Cortisol, released in times of stress, affects not only the body's metabolism, but also the way the brain perceives and responds. Serotonin and dopamine, though often thought of as neurotransmitters, also act as hormonal signals, influencing mood, motivation, and sleep. Melatonin, released by the pineal gland, guides the cycle of wakefulness and rest, rising in the evening to encourage sleep, falling in the morning to allow alertness. These hormones link the rhythms of the body to the rhythms of the mind, creating a harmony between physical and emotional states. It is soothing to imagine this network of signals within you now. Small glands release molecules into the blood, and those molecules drift silently, carried along with the current. They pass through arteries and veins, through capillaries and tissues, until they find their targets. There, like keys fitting into locks, they bind to receptors on cells, unlocking responses. One cell begins to take in glucose, another shifts its pace of activity, another divides and grows, another adjusts its release of its own signals. All of this happens without noise, without haste, without your awareness. It is the quiet choreography of hormones, guiding balance in every moment of your life. The endocrine system is, at its heart, another example of cooperation. A gland may release a hormone, but without receptors, it would have no effect. A cell may respond, but without the hormone, it would not know when to act. Feedback loops link them together, preventing excess and ensuring sufficiency. The pancreas cannot regulate blood sugar without the liver's cooperation. The thyroid cannot guide metabolism without the pituitary's signals. The adrenal glands cannot respond to stress without the brain's perception. It is a system of interdependence, each part contributing to the whole. So as you let your thoughts soften and your breathing slow, remember that even now, hormones are flowing quietly through you. They are guiding your metabolism, regulating your energy, balancing your mood, and preparing you for rest. They are subtle and unseen, yet they shape every moment of your existence. To reflect on them is to find comfort in the knowledge that your body is guided by wisdom, written in chemistry, carried in blood, sustained by cooperation, and as you drift into deeper calm, you are carried by their rhythms, supported by their balance, held by the quiet harmony of endocrine signals flowing endlessly through you. 17. Growth, repair, and renewal. Every living organism carries within it the remarkable ability not only to grow but also to repair and renew itself. This quiet power is woven into the very fabric of cellular life. For growth and renewal are nothing more than cells dividing, replacing, and cooperating in a cycle that continues from the first moments of life until its very end. Growth begins with a single cell, an origin that expands into tissues and organs, while repair ensures that when damage occurs, the body can restore balance. Renewal continues throughout life, as cells wear out and are replaced, as tissues adapt to changing needs. To reflect on growth, repair, and renewal is to reflect on life's resilience, on the gentle cycles that sustain us, and on the harmony of processes that unfold even now within you as you rest. Growth begins with cell division, the process by which one cell becomes two. This division is not random but highly organized, guided by the sequence of events known as the cell cycle. In interphase, the cell grows, gathers nutrients, and duplicates its DNA, ensuring that the instructions of life are preserved. In mitosis, the chromosomes line up and are pulled apart, each daughter cell receiving an identical set. Finally, the cell splits into two, a process called cytokinesis. This cycle repeats endlessly, a rhythm as old as life itself, allowing tissues to expand, organisms to develop, and wounds to heal. Even now, millions of your cells are dividing, replacing those that have aged, extending the continuity of life within you. From this simple act of division arises the growth of the embryo, the transformation of a fertilized egg into a complete organism. At first, the divisions create identical cells, but soon they begin to specialize. Some become muscle cells, others neurons, others epithelial linings or connective tissues. Signals from their environment guide their choices, ensuring that the right cells appear in the right places. Out of this orchestrated growth arises the form of the body, each part shaped by countless divisions and differentiations. It is a process of both expansion and refinement, of multiplication and specialization. A quiet dance that creates the diversity of tissues and organs. But growth is not confined to development. It continues throughout life in subtler ways. In childhood and adolescence, bones lengthen, as cartilage at their ends is replaced by new bone tissue. Muscles expand as cells grow and add fibers. Organs enlarge to meet the needs of a growing body. Even in adulthood, growth persists at the microscopic level, as tissues adapt to use and demand. Muscles grow stronger with exercise. Bones become denser with stress. The brain forms new connections as learning occurs. Growth is not only about size, but about adaptation, about the ability of tissues to meet the challenges of life. Repair is another expression of this cellular capacity. When tissue is damaged, whether by injury, wear, or strain, cells respond. At the site of a cut, for example, platelets form a clot to stop bleeding. Fibroblasts, a type of connective tissue cell, begin producing collagen to rebuild the matrix. Epithelial cells at the edges divide and migrate to close the wound. In time, new tissue forms, restoring integrity. Sometimes the repair is seamless, leaving no trace, while other times it results in scar tissue, strong but less flexible. In either case, the principle is the same. cells cooperating to restore what was lost. Within bone, repair is particularly elegant. When a fracture occurs, cells at the site form a soft callus of cartilage and connective tissue. Gradually, this callus is replaced by new bone, woven first in a rough form, then remodeled into stronger, more organized tissue. The process may take weeks or months, but the result is a bone often stronger at the site of the break than it was before. This quiet resilience is a reminder that life does not end with damage. It continues through repair, through renewal. Renewal is perhaps the most constant of these processes. Many cells in the body live only briefly before being replaced. Red blood cells, for example, circulate for about 120 days before being cleared and renewed. The lining of the intestine, exposed to constant wear, replaces its cells every few days. The skin, our outermost barrier, sheds and renews itself continually, creating new layers as old ones are lost. Even in the brain, once thought to lack renewal, some neurons can be generated in adulthood, while connections between existing neurons are constantly reshaped. Renewal is life's quiet background, a steady rhythm of replacement that ensures function continues despite the passage of time. Stem cells are central to this capacity for growth and renewal. These are undifferentiated cells with the ability to divide and give rise to many types of specialized cells. In the bone marrow, stem cells produce red and white blood cells and platelets, ensuring that the blood is constantly replenished. In the skin, stem cells in the basal layer generate new epithelial cells to replace those that are shed. In the intestine, stem cells at the base of tiny folds called crypts produce the cells that line the gut. These stem cells are reservoirs of potential, sources of renewal that ensure tissues remain alive and functional throughout life. The balance of growth, repair, and renewal is delicate, and it is guided by communication between cells. Growth factors, proteins released by one cell, stimulate others to divide. Hormones carry signals that adjust the pace of renewal. Feedback loops ensure that repair does not go too far, that growth does not overwhelm, that balance is restored once the task is done. This balance is what allows tissues to maintain integrity without chaos, to adapt without losing control. It is a balance sustained not by a single cell, but by the collective harmony of many. It is soothing to imagine this harmony within yourself now. Picture cells in your skin dividing quietly, forming new layers that will soon replace the old. Picture bone cells remodeling their matrix, strengthening the framework that holds you. Picture stem cells in your marrow producing red blood cells, which will soon carry oxygen through your body. Picture immune cells clearing away debris, fibroblasts weaving new collagen, neurons forming new connections. As memories settle, all of this is happening without your awareness, without demand, carried out by the ceaseless rhythms of growth, repair, and renewal. The resilience of life is perhaps most clearly seen in these rhythms. Damage is not the end but the beginning of repair. Loss is not permanent but answered with renewal. Growth is not only for the young but continues subtly throughout life, adapting and responding. Cells make this possible, not alone but together, each contributing its part, each participating in the harmony of balance. It is a lesson written in biology but resonant beyond it, that life is sustained not by perfection but by the capacity to renew, to repair, to grow again. So as you let your mind drift, let this thought settle gently. Within you, countless cells are at work, building, mending, replacing. They carry out growth when needed, repair when harmed, renewal always. Their efforts are steady, their rhythms constant, their cooperation unbroken. You are sustained not by static perfection, but by living cycles, cycles of change that ensure continuity. And as you rest, you may take comfort in knowing that even in stillness, renewal continues, growth unfolds, and repair is always ready, carrying you forward in the quiet resilience of life. 18. Aging and cellular limits. Every living being is bound by time, and within the body, this truth is written in the lives of cells. Cells are capable of remarkable growth, repair, and renewal, but they are not without limits. With each division, with each cycle of activity, subtle changes accumulate, and these changes shape the process we call aging. Aging is not sudden. It is a gradual unfolding, a slow transformation written in the language of molecules and membranes, chromosomes, and enzymes. To reflect on aging at the cellular level is to see life not only in terms of vitality and resilience, but also in terms of impermanence and balance. Yet within this inevitability there is beauty, for aging reminds us of the cycles that shape all living things, of the quiet truth that life is sustained not by permanence but by rhythm, by change, and by renewal. One of the clearest expressions of cellular limits lies in the process of division itself. Most cells can only divide a finite number of times, a phenomenon known as the Hayflick limit. With each division, the ends of chromosomes, called telomeres, shorten slightly. These telomeres act as protective caps, preventing damage to the DNA, but they cannot be fully copied when a cell divides. Over time, they grow shorter, until eventually the cell can no longer divide safely. At this point, the cell enters a state known as senescence, where it remains alive but ceases to replicate. This limit ensures stability, preventing uncontrolled growth, but it also contributes to the gradual decline of renewal as tissues age. Some cells, such as stem cells, carry enzymes called telomerases that replenish their telomeres, allowing them to divide many more times. This is why stem cells can continue to produce new cells throughout life. But even stem cells face challenges, for their environments change with age, and signals that guide their activity become less precise. As a result, renewal slows, and tissues gradually lose their capacity to repair. This is part of the cellular basis of aging, not a failure, but a natural rhythm, a balance between growth and restraint. Another aspect of cellular aging comes from the accumulation of damage. Within each cell, molecules are constantly exposed to stress. Reactive oxygen species formed during metabolism, environmental toxins, and the simple wear of time. Proteins can misfold, DNA can suffer breaks, membranes can weaken. Cells have many systems to repair this damage: enzymes that fix DNA, proteins that refold or degrade damaged molecules, antioxidants that neutralize reactive species. But over years and decades, the burden grows heavier, and not all damage can be repaired. Gradually, it accumulates, leading to changes in how cells function. Some become less efficient, others less responsive, and together these subtle declines shape the process of aging. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, play a special role in this process. They generate energy by processing oxygen, but in doing so, they also produce reactive byproducts. Over time, mitochondrial DNA, which lies close to these reactions, accumulates mutations. The efficiency of energy production declines, and cells begin to experience shortages. Muscles may weaken, neurons may lose clarity, tissues may tire. The gradual decline in mitochondrial function is one of the threads that weaves the fabric of aging, reminding us that even the engines of life carry limits. Senescent cells, those that have reached the end of their division potential, also contribute to aging in another way. While they no longer divide, they remain metabolically active, and they release signals into their environment. Some of these signals can promote inflammation, altering the behavior of neighboring cells. In small amounts, this process may help in wound healing, but when senescent cells accumulate, the signals can disrupt tissue balance, contributing to the slow decline of function. The body does attempt to clear these cells through immune activity, but over time, clearance becomes less efficient, and senescent cells persist. Their presence is a reminder that even in stillness, cells influence their neighbors, shaping the environment of tissues. Aging also affects communication between cells. Signals that once flowed smoothly can become disrupted. Hormonal messages may be less precise, immune responses less restrained, repair signals less effective. This decline in communication mirrors the decline of tissues themselves, for cooperation depends not only on the strength of individual cells, but on the clarity of their dialogue. When communication falters, the harmony of the whole body begins to shift. Yet even here, we find resilience. For many signals remain strong, many pathways continue to function, and the body adapts to new balances. It is soothing to think of aging not as an abrupt end, but as a gradual shift in rhythm. Imagine the body as an orchestra. In youth, the instruments are new, the strings taut, the notes bright. As time passes, some strings loosen, some tones deepen. The pace slows, yet the music continues, still harmonious, still rich, shaped by the passage of time. Cells, like instruments, adjust their contributions, and the whole system adapts. Aging is not silence, but a softer melody, a different expression of the same life. There is also beauty in the ways cells continue to serve. Aged neurons may lose some plasticity, but they also carry the memories of a lifetime, the patterns of thought that shape identity. Older immune cells may be less vigorous, but they carry the wisdom of countless encounters, the memory of defenses won. Stem cells may be fewer, but those that remain continue to renew and repair. The limits of cells do not erase their contributions. They give them context, a frame in which to see the value of their long service. Aging at the cellular level also reflects a universal principle, that nothing in life is static, that change is the essence of continuity. Cells are born, they live, they serve, and they pass. Tissues adapt, organs adjust, systems find new balances. Aging is not failure, but the unfolding of this cycle, the passage of time expressed in biology. It reminds us gently that life is not about permanence, but about rhythm, about change and renewal. As you rest now, imagine the quiet cycles within your own body. Some cells are dividing, bringing renewal. Some are repairing, mending damage. Some are reaching the end of their cycles, entering senescence. Together, they form a tapestry of time, a living record of resilience and change. Your body is not the same as it was years ago, nor will it remain the same in the years to come. But it continues, always, sustained by the cooperation of its cells, by the balance of growth and decline, by the quiet harmony of limits and renewal. So let this thought settle gently. Aging is not an enemy but a companion, a reflection of life's rhythms, a reminder of cycles too deep to resist. Your cells are not perfect, nor are they meant to be. They are resilient, adaptable, and wise in their cooperation. They carry within them the traces of time, but they continue, always, to sustain you. And as you drift into deeper rest, you may take comfort in the knowledge that even in aging, life is rich, balanced, and harmonious, guided by the quiet truth that every limit is also part of the rhythm of existence. 19. Cooperation in multicellular life. From the smallest bacterium to the most complex creature, life at its foundation is cellular. Yet one of the greatest transitions in the history of biology was the step from single-celled existence to multicellular life. It was in this shift that cooperation reached a new depth, for individual cells began to live not for themselves alone, but for the harmony of the whole. In multicellular organisms, cells surrender some of their independence, specializing into roles that cannot sustain them alone, yet that together form the tissues and organs of a living being. To reflect on this cooperation is to see the essence of life's complexity, that survival is not only about competition but about collaboration, that the strength of many lies in their willingness to work together in unity. The earliest cells on Earth lived independently, carrying out all the processes of life within a single membrane. They grew, divided, and responded to their environment, but each lived largely in isolation. Over time, some began to form colonies, groups of cells living side by side, often in chains or clusters. In these colonies, cooperation began simply, with cells sharing nutrients or providing protection for one another. Gradually, this cooperation deepened. Some cells began to take on different roles, dividing labor for the good of the group. Eventually, true multicellularity emerged, in which cells became permanently specialized, giving up the ability to live alone in order to serve the collective organism. This was one of the most profound steps in evolution, a step that made plants, animals, fungi, and countless other forms of life possible. The key to multicellular cooperation is communication. For the body of an animal or plant to function, its trillions of cells must remain aware of one another, sharing signals that guide growth, differentiation, and behavior. These signals come in many forms: electrical impulses, chemical messengers, hormones, and direct contact through junctions between membranes. Each signal carries meaning, instructing cells when to divide, when to stop, when to change shape, when to release products, or when to remain still. Without this constant conversation, the body would collapse into chaos, as cells acted at cross purposes. With it, the organism remains whole, each cell contributing quietly to the greater balance. Specialization is another hallmark of multicellular cooperation. Unlike single-celled organisms, which must carry out all tasks alone, cells in multicellular bodies divide their labor. Muscle cells contract, nerve cells carry impulses, red blood cells transport oxygen, epithelial cells protect surfaces, and immune cells defend. Each is adapted to its role, and in many cases, it cannot perform any other. A red blood cell cannot divide or repair itself, but it carries oxygen with efficiency unmatched by other cells. A neuron cannot contract, but it transmits signals across vast networks. This specialization is both a limitation and a gift. For though no single cell is complete, together they form a living whole of immense complexity. The cooperation of cells in multicellular life also requires restraint. In a community of cells, each must know when to grow and when to stop, when to divide and when to rest. If one cell grows unchecked, ignoring the signals of its neighbors, it threatens the harmony of the whole. Cancer is an example of this failure. When cells cease to cooperate, pursuing their own growth at the expense of the organism. Such conditions remind us that cooperation is not passive but active, requiring continual communication, continual balance, and continual trust among cells. Most of the time, this trust is sustained, and the body flourishes as a community of harmony. Multicellular life also reveals the principle of interdependence. No cell within your body could survive long on its own. A neuron depends on glial cells for nourishment and support. A muscle cell depends on the circulatory system for oxygen and nutrients. An epithelial cell depends on connective tissue for strength. Even stem cells, the sources of renewal, depend on signals from their environment to guide their fate. Each cell is both independent in its structure and dependent in its role, a paradox resolved by the cooperation of the whole. This interdependence is what allows multicellular organisms to achieve levels of complexity far beyond the reach of single cells. Plants offer another example of this harmony. In a tree, root cells absorb water and minerals from the soil, but they cannot photosynthesize. Leaf cells capture sunlight and produce sugars, but they cannot draw water from the ground. Vascular tissues connect the two, carrying water upward and sugars downward, linking roots, stems, and leaves into one cooperative system. Each cell type gives up self-sufficiency, contributing instead to the life of the whole tree. This cooperation allows the tree to grow tall, to spread its branches, to endure for centuries. Without it, the cells would remain scattered, never forming the living giant that shades the earth. Even within simpler multicellular organisms, cooperation is clear. Sponges, among the earliest animals, are composed of specialized cells that filter water, capture food, and form structural support. None of these cells alone could survive in the same way, but together they create an organism capable of sustaining itself in the currents of the sea. In more complex animals, this principle expands into tissues, organs, and systems, but the underlying truth remains the same. Unity arises from cooperation, strength from specialization, resilience from connection. It is soothing to imagine multicellular life as a great city, each cell a citizen with its own role. Some build, some transport, some defend, some govern. No one citizen sustains the city alone, but together they form a thriving community. The bloodstream is the highway, carrying goods from one district to another. The nervous system is the communication line, passing messages across the whole. The skin is the city wall, the muscles its moving force, the bones its foundation. Each cell, small and humble, contributes to the greater being, and the city flourishes because of their shared labor. This cooperation extends beyond the body of a single organism. In ecosystems, multicellular beings rely on one another in vast webs of interdependence. Plants produce oxygen and sugars, which animals consume. Animals release carbon dioxide and spread seeds, supporting plants in return. Fungi break down organic matter, recycling nutrients into the soil. Bacteria fix nitrogen, making it available for roots. Each organism is itself a community of cells, and together they form the larger community of the ecosystem. In this way, the principle of cooperation extends from the microscopic to the planetary, from cells to biospheres. As you rest now, imagine the countless cells within you working together. Your heart's muscle cells beat in rhythm. Your lung cells exchange gases. Your blood cells carry oxygen. Your neurons whisper signals. Each one is alive. Each one is doing its part, and none could survive alone. Together, they form you, a living being, an expression of multicellular cooperation. Their harmony is constant, their dialogue unbroken, their balance sustained without your awareness. It is a quiet truth, but a profound one. You are not a solitary unit, but a symphony of cells, each one contributing, each one part of the greater whole. So let this thought ease you further into calm. Life is cooperation at every level, from the first colonies of cells to the tissues of your body, from the organs that serve you to the ecosystems that surround you. Existence is sustained by unity. No cell is alone, no organism complete in itself. All depend on one another, all contribute, all belong. As you drift deeper into rest, you are carried by this harmony, sustained by the quiet cooperation of your cells, and connected to the wider fabric of life, where cooperation is the rhythm of existence. 20. A symphony of cellular unity. As we come to the gentle close of this long journey through the hidden world of cells, it is fitting to pause and reflect on the harmony that binds it all together. From the smallest structures inside a single cell to the great communities that form tissues, organs, and entire organisms, the story of life is not one of solitary effort, but of cooperation. It is a story of billions and trillions of units, each with its own role, each limited in its own way, yet together creating a unity greater than the sum of its parts. To reflect on this is to see life itself as a symphony, an endless music played not by instruments of wood or string, but by living cells, coordinated and balanced, flowing in a rhythm that sustains us all. Every cell is remarkable on its own. Within its tiny boundaries, it carries the machinery to harvest energy, to store information, to sense its environment, and to respond with purpose. It is a microcosm, complete in itself, a world of membranes, organelles, and molecules, humming with constant activity. Yet the beauty of the cell is revealed most fully when it joins with others. Alone, a cell can survive. Together, cells can create the heartbeat of an animal, the growth of a tree, the flowering of a meadow, the thought of a mind. They surrender some of their independence, specialize in their tasks, and rely on one another for survival. In this surrender, they gain the power to form life as we know it, from the simplest sponge to the complexity of a human being. The cooperation of cells is seen most clearly in the way they divide labor. Muscle cells generate force, neurons transmit signals, red blood cells carry oxygen, epithelial cells form protective layers, and immune cells defend against harm. No single cell can perform all these tasks, and none can thrive without the others. Yet together they weave the fabric of the body, each thread different, yet all contributing to the whole. It is like an orchestra, where the violin cannot play the part of the drum, nor the flute the part of the horn, but together they create music richer than any single sound. Communication is the glue that holds this unity together. Cells speak a language of molecules and impulses, of hormones drifting through blood, of neurotransmitters crossing synapses, of ions flowing through gap junctions. Signals pass constantly, carrying instructions, warnings, and reassurances. Some signals say, grow. Others say, rest. Some say, defend, while others say, stand down. Without these signals, tissues would lose their balance, and organs would falter. With them, harmony is sustained, and the body continues in quiet rhythm. Even as you rest now, trillions of signals are being exchanged within you, countless dialogues flowing unseen, guiding every breath, every beat, every thought. The resilience of life also rests on cycles of growth, repair, and renewal. Cells divide to expand tissues, to heal wounds, to replace what is worn. Stem cells stand as reservoirs of potential, ready to replenish the body. Even when cells reach their limits in age, they do so with dignity, yielding space for the new, ensuring that continuity remains unbroken. The body is not static but always renewing, always adapting, always adjusting. This cycle is another form of cooperation, a passing of the torch from one generation of cells to the next, ensuring that the organism as a whole endures. And yet, there are limits. Aging reminds us that cooperation is not infinite, that cells carry with them the marks of time. Telomeres shorten, mitochondria tire, communication falters, and tissues change. But even here, we see not failure but a different rhythm, a slowing of the symphony, a softer melody shaped by experience. Cells may not divide as often, but they still sustain. Immune cells may not respond as vigorously, but they carry the memory of countless encounters. The story of aging is not the end of cooperation, but the continuation of it in new form. A reminder that life is always changing, always adapting, always finding balance. When we step back, we see that the unity of cells extends beyond the body to the world itself. Plants capture sunlight in their chloroplasts, producing oxygen and sugars. Animals breathe the oxygen, eat the sugars, and return carbon dioxide to the air. Fungi break down fallen leaves, recycling nutrients into the soil. Bacteria enrich the earth with nitrogen, making growth possible. Every organism is itself a community of cells, and every organism is linked to others in the great cycle of life. In this way, the cooperation of cells expands outward, connecting all beings in one vast web, a planetary symphony that has played for billions of years. It is soothing to think of this symphony as a quiet music flowing through you now. The mitochondria in your cells are the percussion, beating out the rhythm of energy. The neurons are the strings, carrying melodies of thought and sensation. The muscles are the brass, powerful and resonant, moving the body with force. The immune cells are the woodwinds, subtle yet essential, weaving defense into the harmony. The hormones are the conductors, guiding the pace, ensuring balance. And you, as the listener, are the symphony itself, not separate from it but composed of it, sustained by its every note. This symphony does not falter. Even as you sleep, your heart continues to beat, your lungs to draw breath, your brain to hum with quiet signals. Cells divide, renew, and repair. Hormones flow, blood circulates, neurons fire gently. It is a music without pause, a concert that began before you were born and will continue throughout your life. You are carried by it, held in its rhythm, sustained by its harmony. Even in silence, the symphony plays on, steady and constant, a song of life, written in the language of cells. To reflect on this is to feel comfort, for it reminds us that we are not alone. Within you are trillions of cells, each alive, each working, each cooperating. Around you are countless organisms, each sustained by their own cells, each linked to the others in cycles of energy and renewal. All of life is bound by the same principles, the same cooperation, the same symphony. In this knowledge, there is peace, for it shows us that we are part of something vast, harmonious, and enduring. So let this thought ease you into rest. Your body is a symphony of cellular unity, a harmony sustained by cooperation at every level. The cells within you are working now, quietly and tirelessly, ensuring that you are nourished, protected, and whole. Their music is not loud but steady, not fleeting but constant, a gentle rhythm that carries you through life. And as you drift deeper into calm, you are held by this symphony, sustained by its harmony, comforted by its constancy. It is the quiet song of life, always playing, always carrying you forward, always reminding you that within the smallest parts lies the greatest unity.